At dinner, my son slapped his mother while his wife clapped. He laughed and said she needs to learn her place. I quietly stood up, made a phone call, and said, "Let us see who really needs a lesson." When the doorknob turned, the look of sheer terror on my son's face told me he knew it was over. My name is Cyrus Blackwood. I am 70 years old, and for the last decade my family has looked at me as nothing more than a senile old man who spends too much time tending to his rose bushes. They think my mind is slipping. They think my silence is weakness. They have absolutely no idea that for 40 years I was the man corporations called when they needed to find missing millions. I was a forensic accountant for the biggest firms on Wall Street. I did not just crunch numbers, I hunted predators, I destroyed embezzlers, fraudsters, and thieves who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I retired quietly with a fortune that I never flashed because I wanted to raise a son who valued hard work, not inheritance. Clearly, I failed. If you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments which city you are watching from because this story is about to go global. It was Thanksgiving Thursday. The air in our dining room should have been filled with the smell of roasted turkey and the warmth of family. Instead, it smelled of expensive perfume and entitlement. My wife Beatrice had spent 2 days cooking. She made her signature collard greens, cornbread dressing, and sweet potato pie. She is 68 years old with arthritis in her hands, but she stood in that kitchen for hours because she loves our son Dante. Dante sat at the head of the table like a king in a castle he did not pay for. He is 40 years old wearing a $3,000 suit that I know he charged to a credit card I secretly pay off. Next to him was his wife Courtney. She is 35, a former model who has not worked a day since she married him. She sat there scrolling on her phone, barely touching the food my wife had slaved over. The conversation started normal enough, but I could see the sweat on Dante's forehead. I know that look. It is the look of a man who is drowning in debt and looking for a lifeline. I have seen it on 100 CEOs right before I sent them to federal prison. Dad. Mom Dante started putting down his fork. We need to talk about the house. Here we go, I thought. I took a sip of my iced tea and watched him. Courtney and I have an opportunity. Dante continued, his voice rising with false excitement. It is a crypto investment venture. Ground floor stuff. Guaranteed returns of 300% by next quarter. But we need liquidity. I cut him off calmly. We are not selling the house, Dante. Dante slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. Beatrice flinched. You are not listening to me, old man, Dante shouted. This house is sitting on dead equity. It is worth $2 million. If you sign it over to me, I can leverage it and triple our family wealth in 6 months. I looked at him. My expression did not change. Son, you have not made a profit in your own business in 5 years. You are not touching this deed. This is your mother home. Courtney let out a sharp, cruel laugh. She did not even look up from her phone. God, you two are so useless, she muttered. You are sitting on a gold mine and you are too stupid to use it. You should just die and get out of the way. Beatrice gasped. She looked at Courtney with tears in her eyes. Courtney, how can you say that? We have given you everything. We let you live in the penthouse downtown. We pay for your car. Shut up, Beatrice, Courtney snapped. You give us crumbs. You hoard the real money. Dante's face turned red. He stood up. His chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. Sign the papers. Mom, he demanded, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a folded document. Sign them now, or so help me God. Beatrice shook her head, her hands trembling. No, Dante. Your father said no. That was the moment the world stopped. Dante swung his hand back and struck his mother across the face. The sound was like a whip cracking. It was loud, violent, and sickening. My wife, my gentle Beatrice, who has never hurt a soul, fell out of her chair and hit the floor hard. Her glasses flew off and shattered against the baseboard. Silence. Absolute deafening silence. Then Courtney started clapping. Slow, rhythmic claps. Finally, she said, sneering at my wife on the floor, maybe that will knock some sense into her. She needs to learn her place. This is Dante's future she is holding back. I sat there for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, the father in me died, and the forensic hunter woke up. I looked at Dante. He was breathing hard, rubbing his hands, staring at his mother with a mix of adrenaline and rage. He did not look sorry. He looked empowered. I stood up. I did not rush. I did not scream. I walked over to Beatrice and knelt down. Her lip was bleeding. There was a red mark forming on her cheek. I helped her sit up and checked her eyes. She was in shock, shaking like a leaf. "I am okay, Cyrus," she whispered. But I knew she wasn't. Her heart was broken. I stood up and looked at my son. I did not see my child anymore. I saw a target. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old flip phone. Dante laughed. "Look at him, Courtney," Dante mocked. "He is calling the police on his flip phone. Go ahead, Dad. Call them. Chief Miller is my golf buddy. Who do you think he is going to believe? The successful businessman or the senile old man who forgot to take his meds?" I did not call the police. I dialed a number I had not used in 5 years. It rang once. "Strickland," I said, my voice low and steady. "Mr. Blackwood." The voice on the other end answered immediately. It was sharp, precise. "Activate Protocol 0, I said. "Immediate extraction. Hostile targets on site. Understood, sir." ETA 3 minutes. I hung up and put the phone back in my pocket. Dante looked confused for a second, but then he laughed again. "Protocol 0. Listen to him. He thinks he is in a spy movie." "You are losing it, Dad. This proves it." He reached into his briefcase and threw another folder onto the table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of me. "Read it," old man Dante spat. "Since you want to play games, that is a competency evaluation. Signed by Dr. Alastair. It states that both you and Mom are suffering from advanced dementia. You are a danger to yourselves." I looked at the folder. I did not need to open it to know it was forged or bought. Courtney chimed in, pouring herself more wine. "We have power of attorney now, Cyrus. We are putting you both in a facility tomorrow morning. A nice, cheap, state-run facility. We will take the house, the accounts, and the cars. You are done." Beatrice began to sob softly on the floor. I squeezed her shoulder. "You really think you have won, Dante?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "I know I have won." Dante smirked. "I have the papers. I have the police chief. I have the strength. You are just a frail old man." "You are right," I said. "I am old. But you forgot one thing, son." "What is that?" "You forgot who paid for your golf membership with the police chief. You forgot who paid for the suit you are wearing. And you forgot that I do not need the police to handle trash." Dante stepped forward, fists clenched. "You want another slap, old man." Suddenly there was a sound outside. It was not a siren. It was the heavy hum of engines. Powerful engines. Headlights swept across the dining room window, blindingly bright. Tires screeched on the gravel of our driveway. Not one car. 3. Dante frowned. He looked at the window. "Is that Miller?" "He is early." He walked to the front door, a confident swagger in his step. He grabbed the doorknob. "Watch this, Courtney," he called back. "Watch me throw them out of their own house." He ripped the door open. Dante's smile froze. It was not Chief Miller. Standing on my porch were 6 men. They were not wearing police uniforms. They were wearing tactical black gear. On their chests was a logo, a silver shield with a black wolf. Blackwood Security Solutions. They were huge, they were armed, and they were not smiling. The man in front was a giant named Marcus. I had hired him 10 years ago as a personal favor to a general I audited. Marcus stepped into the doorframe, forcing Dante to stumble back. Dante's face went pale. Who are you? Get out of my house." Marcus did not even look at Dante. He looked past him directly at me. "Mr. Blackwood." Marcus said, his voice deep like gravel. "Protocol 0 is active. What are your orders?" Dante turned around slowly. He looked at me, then back at the men, then back at me. The terror in his eyes was absolute. Dad Dante stammered, "What is this?" I walked over to Beatrice and helped her into a chair. I wiped the blood from her lip with a napkin. Then I turned to my son. "I told you, Dante," I said calmly. "I am not calling the police. I am calling the people who pay the police." Courtney stood up, her wine glass falling and shattering on the floor. "Who are these people, Cyrus? Make them leave. You are scaring me." "You should be scared," I said. "Marcus, secure the premises," I ordered. "Yes, sir." 2 men moved past Dante like he was a ghost. They secured the back door and the windows. Marcus stepped into the living room. Dante tried to regain his composure. This is trespassing. I own this house. I have the medical papers. I am in charge here. Marcus looked at Dante with pure disdain. He reached out with one hand and grabbed Dante by the lapel of his $3,000 suit. He lifted him off the ground until his toes were barely touching the floor. Dante gasped, clawing at Marcus' hand. "Mr. Blackwood signs my checks, kid," Marcus growled. "And from what I see on the company registry as of 5 minutes ago, you do not own anything. Not this house. Not that car outside. Not even the phone in your pocket." "What are you talking about?" Dante choked out. I walked closer. I stood right in front of my son. "Dante," I said, "did you really think I let you run Blackwood Holdings because you were smart?" Dante's eyes widened. Blackwood Holdings was the shell company I set up for him to play CEO. "I set that company up to keep you busy," I explained. "Every asset you have, the penthouse, the Mercedes, the expense accounts, they are all leased by the parent company." "Parent company," Dante wheezed. "My company," I whispered. "I own it all, Dante. I always have. And as of right now, I am dissolving the subsidiary." I signaled to Marcus. He dropped Dante. My son fell to his knees, gasping for air. Courtney rushed over not to help him, but to grab her purse. She started backing away. "I am leaving. This is insane. I am going to my parents." I looked at her. "You can try, Courtney," I said. "But check your phone." She pulled out her phone. Her face went white. "My cards," she whispered. "They are declining. My Uber account is locked." "I canceled the supplementary cards, Courtney," I said. "You see, you two forgot the golden rule. Never bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand is the only reason you are not starving." Dante looked up from the floor. There was hate in his eyes, now mixed with fear. "You cannot do this," he spat. "Squatters' rights. We have lived in the penthouse for 5 years. You have to evict us. It will take months." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Actually, Dante, I do not have to evict you, because you do not have a lease. You were guests, and guests can be removed for bad behavior." I turned to Marcus. "Get the keys," I said. Marcus held out his hand. Car keys, house keys, watch. What? Dante screamed, clutching his wrist. "This is my Rolex. You gave it to me for my birthday. It is company property listed as a promotional asset," I corrected. "Hand it over." Dante hesitated. Marcus stepped forward and cracked his knuckles. Dante quickly unclasped the watch and dropped it into Marcus' hand along with his car keys. Courtney threw her keys on the floor, screaming, "You are a monster. You are enjoying this." I looked at my wife sitting in the chair holding an ice pack to her face. Enjoying it, I asked softly, "No, Courtney. There is no joy in realizing you raised a monster. There is no joy in seeing your wife bleed because your son is a greedy coward. This is not joy. This is cleanup." I turned back to Dante. "You have 30 minutes, I said, checking my watch. 30 minutes for what? Dante asked, his voice trembling. "To get out of my sight," I said. "Not just out of this house, out of my life. If you are still on my property in 31 minutes, Marcus has instructions to treat you as a hostile intruder." Dante scrambled to his feet. "But where will we go? We have no money." "You froze the accounts." "There is a homeless shelter on 5th Street, I suggested. "They serve turkey tonight. Maybe you will learn some gratitude there." Dante glared at me. "This isn't over, old man. I have rights. I will sue you. I will drag you through court. I will tell everyone you are abusive." "Go ahead," I said. "But before you do, you might want to look at the corner of the room." I pointed to the smoke detector on the ceiling. There was a tiny red light blinking. "I installed cameras 3 months ago, Dante," I revealed. "Because money was going missing from the house. I thought maybe it was the cleaning lady. Turns out it was you." Dante's face fell. "I have footage of you slapping your mother," I said. "High definition. Audio and video. If you try to sue me, if you try to go to the media, if you even breathe in my direction, I will hand that footage to the district attorney. Assault on an elderly person is a felony, Dante. Do you want to go to prison?" Dante looked at Courtney. Courtney looked at the door. "Let us go," Courtney hissed, grabbing Dante's arm. "He is crazy." They ran. They did not even grab their coats. They ran out of the front door into the cold November night. I watched them go. I watched them try to get into the Mercedes, only to realize they didn't have the keys. I watched them argue in the driveway. I watched them start walking down the long, dark road towards the main highway. Marcus walked up beside me. "Do you want us to follow them, sir?" he asked. "No," I said, closing the door. "Let them walk. It is a long walk to the bottom." I turned back to Beatrice. She was looking at me like she had never seen me before. "Cyrus," she whispered. "Who are you?" I walked over and kissed her forehead. "I am just the gardener, Beatrice," I said softly. "But sometimes you have to pull up the weeds to save the flowers." But I knew this was just the beginning. Dante was desperate. Courtney was vicious. They would not just walk away, they would find a way to strike back, and I was right. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it. "Hello, Dad." It was Dante. He was panting. He sounded manic. "You think you are smart, don't you?" he spat. "You think you took everything." "I took what was mine," I replied. "You missed something," Dante said, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "You forgot about the safe in the penthouse." I frowned. "What safe?" "The one in the guest bedroom," Dante said. "The one where you keep your old files. The files from the 90s. The files about the Panama accounts." My blood ran cold. Those files were supposed to be destroyed 10 years ago. They contained sensitive information about clients who were dangerous, very dangerous men. I made copies. Dad. Dante laughed. "And if you don't unlock my cards and transfer $5 million into my offshore account by midnight, I am going to email them to the cartel." He hung up. I stood there in the silence of my dining room. My wife was safe for now, but my son had just declared war. He did not realize he was threatening a man who used to eat threats for breakfast. I looked at Marcus. "Get the car," I said. "Where are we going, sir?" Marcus asked. "We are going to the penthouse," I said, buttoning my jacket. "And bring the heavy equipment. My son wants to play gangster. I am going to show him what a real gangster looks like." The night was just getting started. The wind on the porch was biting, cutting through the thin fabric of Dante, $3,000 suit. He stood by the driver's side of the matte black Mercedes G-Wagon, his hand pulling uselessly at the handle. The car was locked. The lights did not flash. It sat there like a $200,000 paperweight. "Open it!" Dante screamed, slamming his fist against the window. He looked at me, his eyes wild with panic and rage. "Give me the remote access, Dad. I am leaving." I stood on the top step, my hands deep in my pockets. Beside me, Marcus, the head of my security team, crossed his massive arms. He looked like a statue carved out of night and granite. "That isn't your car, Dante," I said, my voice carrying easily over the wind. "It is my car," Dante yelled. "You gave it to me. It has my initials on the seats." I shook my head slowly. "No, son. I let you drive it. There is a difference. That vehicle is registered to Blackwood Holdings. It is classified as a corporate transport asset. And since you are no longer the CEO of Blackwood Holdings as of 10 minutes ago, you are no longer authorized to operate it." Dante's face twisted. "You cannot do this. This is theft. It is asset recovery," Marcus rumbled, stepping down the stairs. Marcus moved with a speed that defied his size. He was on Dante in a second. He did not strike him. He simply invaded his space, forcing Dante to back up against the cold metal of the SUV. "Hand over the fob," Marcus said. Dante fumbled in his pocket, his hands shaking so badly he dropped the keys on the gravel. Marcus scooped them up without breaking eye contact. "And the watch," Marcus added. Dante clutched his left wrist, covering the gold Patek Philippe Nautilus. "No, no way. This was a birthday gift. You gave this to me at the yacht club. Everyone saw it. It is personal property." I walked down one step. "I gave it to you at a company retreat." "Dante," I corrected. "I wrote it off as a performance bonus to avoid gift tax. Technically, it belongs to the shareholders. And since I am the only shareholder, I am revoking the bonus." Dante looked at me with pure hatred. "You are petty, old man. You are a petty, bitter old man." "I am a forensic accountant, Dante," I said, cold as ice. "I do not do petty. I do precise. That watch is worth $120,000. You owe the company $4 million in embezzled funds. Consider this a down payment." Marcus held out his hand. Dante hesitated. Marcus leaned in and whispered something I could not hear, but Dante's face drained of all color. He quickly unclasped the heavy gold band and dropped the watch into Marcus' palm. "There, I hope you choke on it," Dante spat, rubbing his bare wrist. He turned to Courtney, who was shivering in her heels, her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. "Come on, babe," Dante said, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. "We are getting an Uber. We are going home. We do not need this trash. He pulled out his phone to summon a ride. Courtney looked at me, her eyes narrowing. She stepped forward, the gravel crunching under her designer soles. She pointed a manicured finger at my face. "You think you are so smart, Cyrus," she hissed. "But you made a mistake, a big legal mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" "Yes, you did," she said, a smug smile touching her lips. "You kicked us out of this house, fine. But the penthouse downtown, the one on Fifth Avenue, that is our primary residence. We have established tenancy. You cannot just lock us out. We have rights. I know the law. If you try to stop us from entering our home, I will call the police and have you arrested for illegal eviction. I will sue you for every penny you have left." I looked at her. I looked at the confidence in her face, the arrogance of a woman who has never had to work for a roof over her head. I actually laughed. It was a dry, short sound. "Courtney," I said, "you really should have read the papers you signed when you moved in." "What papers?" she snapped. "The lease. It is a standard lease. It is a corporate housing agreement," I said. "Specifically, it is an executive lodging contract." "So what?" she challenged. "It means we live there. It means your occupancy is contingent on employment," I explained, speaking slowly so they would understand the absolute ruin they were facing. Clause 14B of the agreement states that upon termination of employment for cause specifically for criminal misconduct, the occupant must vacate the premises immediately. Dante looked up from his phone. "Criminal misconduct. Assaulting your mother is a crime, Dante," I said. "Embezzling funds is a crime." Courtney's face wavered. "But you have to give us 30 days. "Everyone gets 30 days. "Not in corporate housing," I said. I checked my watch, the simple Timex I have worn for 20 years. "You have 30 minutes, I said. 30 minutes for what Dante asked. "To get your things," I said. "My team is already there. They are boxing up your clothes and your personal items. Anything bought with company cards stays. Anything that is actual personal property will be left on the curb in 30 minutes. After that, the locks change, the codes reset, and the building security has a photo of both of you with instructions to call the police on site." "You are bluffing," Dante screamed. "You cannot do that in 30 minutes. I pulled my phone out and tapped the screen. I turned it around to show them the live feed from the security cameras in the penthouse. On the small screen, they saw men in black uniforms moving efficiently through their living room. They were placing items into cardboard boxes. They were not being gentle. "That is my Chanel bag," Courtney shrieked, reaching for the phone. "That is my fur coat. Those were bought with the corporate Amex," I said, pulling the phone back. "They stay. The boxes on the curb will contain your underwear, your toothbrushes, and whatever clothes you actually paid for with your own money, which from my audit looks like almost nothing." "You are a monster," Courtney screamed, lunging at me. "You are ruining us." I did not flinch. Marcus stepped between us, a solid wall of muscle. "I did not ruin you," I said. "I just stopped paying for your delusions." Dante was frantically tapping on his phone. His thumbs were blurring across the screen. He was ignoring the argument, focused entirely on the glowing rectangle in his hand. "I know what you are doing, Dante," I said. He did not look up. "I have money," he muttered. "I have the rainy day fund, the offshore account you do not know about. I stashed it away. 200 grand. I am moving it right now. We are going to a hotel, and tomorrow I am hiring the best lawyer in the city." I watched him. I watched the hope in his eyes. "Go ahead, son," I said softly. "Press transfer." Dante smirked. "Watch me." He pressed the button with a flourish. He held the phone up like a trophy, waiting for the confirmation screen. The phone pinged, but it was not a confirmation. Dante's smile vanished. His brow furrowed. He tapped the screen again. "What the hell?" he whispered. Another ping, louder this time. He put the phone on speaker without thinking. The robotic voice of the bank automated system cut through the cold night air. "Access denied. This account has been frozen due to suspicious activity reported by the primary guarantor. Please contact the fraud department immediately." Dante stared at the phone. He looked like he had been shot. "Primary guarantor," he whispered. "But I opened this account. It is in my name." I stepped closer, leaning in so he could see the lack of mercy in my eyes. "You opened it when you were 19, Dante," I reminded him. "You had no credit. I co-signed. I have been the guarantor on every account you have ever had. Did you think I just forgot?" "You froze it," Dante said, his voice trembling. That is my money. I earned that. You stole it, I corrected. That money came from vendor kickbacks you set up 3 years ago. I tracked every cent. That is not a rainy day fund, Dante. That is evidence. And I just handed it over to the bank fraud division. Dante dropped his phone. It hit the gravel face down, cracking the screen. He fell to his knees, not in prayer, but in total defeat. I have nothing, he choked out. No house, no car, no money. Courtney stared at him. The realization was washing over her. The lifestyle she had married into the safety net she thought was ironclad had just evaporated into thin air. She looked at Dante on the ground, weeping like a child. Then she looked at me standing tall and untouched. She let out a scream that sounded more animal than human. It was a scream of pure frustration and entitlement. She launched herself at me. Her fingers were curled into claws, aiming for my eyes. "You old devil," she screamed. "I will kill you." She did not get close. Marcus caught her by the wrist in midair. He twisted her arm behind her back, not enough to break it, but enough to immobilize her instantly. Courtney howled in pain, kicking at Marcus' shins. "Let me go." Marcus looked at me. "Permission to remove the trash, sir." I looked at my daughter-in-law. Her mascara was running. Her face was twisted in an ugly mask of greed and hate. "Permission granted," I said. Marcus marched her down the driveway. She was screaming curses, dragging her heels, but she was powerless against him. He threw her toward the street where she stumbled and fell onto the asphalt. Dante looked up at me. Tears were streaming down his face. "Dad, please," he begged. "Where am I supposed to go?" I looked down at him. I felt a twinge in my chest, a small echo of the love I once had for the boy I taught to ride a bike. But then I looked at the window of my house where my wife was sitting with a bruised face, and that echo died. "You figure it out, Dante," I said. "You are a smart boy, or at least you always told me you were." I turned my back on him. I walked up the stairs to my porch. "Dad, wait," Dante called out, his voice breaking. "Dad, please." I opened the front door. The warmth of the house spilled out. "Goodbye, Dante," I said. I closed the door and locked it. The heavy deadbolt slid into place with a sound that felt like a gavel coming down. I stood in the hallway for a moment listening. Outside, I heard the wind. I heard Courtney screaming at Dante. I heard Dante sobbing, and then I heard the sound of footsteps fading away into the darkness. I walked into the living room. Beatrice was waiting for me. She looked at me with sad, tired eyes. "Is it done?" she asked. I sat down next to her and took her hand. "Part 1 is done," I said. "They are gone. They have nothing." Beatrice sighed a long, shaky breath. "But they will be back, Cyrus," she said. "You know they will. They are desperate now." "I know," I said. I pulled out my phone. I had one more call to make tonight. "Who are you calling?" Beatrice asked. "The hotel," I said. "Which hotel?" "The one downtown. The one Dante and Courtney are going to try to check into once they realize they have nowhere else to go." "But you froze their cards," Beatrice said. "They cannot pay." "They will try to use my name," I said, dialing. "They will try to run up a bill on the family reputation. I need to make sure the manager knows that the Blackwood name is closed for business." I put the phone to my ear. "Hello, this is Cyrus Blackwood. Connect me to security. We have a situation." The night was far from over. My son and his wife were down, but they were not out, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I knew Dante. I knew his pride. He would try to hurt me. He would try to find a weakness. But he was about to learn that I had been preparing for this war longer than he had been alive. You think you know desperation, but you do not know it until you see a man realize his entire existence is a lie. Dante stood in the foyer, his chest heaving, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. The freezing of the accounts had broken him, but it had also made him dangerous. He reached behind his back. Beatrice screamed, "No, Dante, do not do it." I did not move. I did not flinch. I just watched as my son pulled a Glock 19 from his waistband. It was a matte black pistol. I knew it well. I paid for the permit, I paid for the gun, I paid for the shooting lessons he never attended. He pointed the barrel directly at my chest. His hand was shaking so hard the sight was dancing all over my shirt. "Give me the codes, old man," Dante screamed. "Unlock the accounts, transfer the money. Do it now, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in you." Courtney was in the corner holding her phone, her eyes wide but calculating. She was not stopping him. She was waiting to see if he would win. Dante put the gun down. I said, my voice dropping an octave. "You have never fired a weapon in anger. You will miss or you will kill your mother by accident. Shut up, Dante yelled, stepping closer. I am not playing. I want $5 million. Transfer it. Marcus, the head of my security team, was standing 6 feet to Dante left. He had not drawn his weapon. He did not need to. He looked at me, waiting for the signal. I looked at my son. I looked at the boy I had carried on my shoulders. And I realized that boy was dead. This was just a stranger with a gun. I nodded once. Marcus moved. It happened so fast that if you blinked, you missed it. Marcus stepped in, slapping the barrel of the gun to the side. The shot went off. Bang! The bullet buried itself in the plaster of the ceiling. Beatrice shrieked and covered her head. Before Dante could pull the trigger again, Marcus had his wrist. There was a sickening crunch sound, the sound of small bones snapping under immense pressure. Dante screamed, dropping the gun. Marcus did not stop there. He kicked Dante in the knee, forcing him to the ground. Then he picked up the Glock. Marcus looked at the gun with disgust. He ejected the magazine and cleared the chamber. Then, with a display of strength that was terrifying to witness, he grabbed the slide and the frame and twisted. Metal groaned. The polymer frame cracked. He literally broke the weapon in his hands and dropped the pieces on the floor next to Dante's sobbing face. Asset neutralized, Marcus said, stepping back. Dante was curled in a ball, clutching his broken wrist, wailing like a siren. My wrist. You broke my wrist. I stood over him. You pulled a gun on your father, I said. You are lucky Marcus did not break your neck. But the war was not over. It was just shifting battlefields. I turned to look for Courtney. She was not helping her husband. She was not checking his wrist. She was standing by the window, the red light of her phone recording. She was live streaming. Help us, please, help us! Courtney screamed into her phone camera, tears streaming down her face. Her acting was Oscar-worthy. We are at the Blackwood estate. My father-in-law has gone crazy. He has hitmen. They just broke my husband's arm. They have guns. They are going to kill us because I am white. Please send the police. I watched her weave the narrative. She was playing the victim perfectly. She was weaponizing her tears, weaponizing race, weaponizing the internet. I could see the viewer count on her screen climbing. 200, 500, 1,000. Comments were flying up the screen. Call 911. Get out of there. That old man is a psycho. She turned the camera toward me. Look at him, she sobbed, pointing the lens at my face. He is just standing there watching his son bleed. He is a monster. I did not hide my face. I looked directly into the lens. Courtney, stop this, Beatrice pleaded from her chair. Tell them the truth. Tell them Dante had a gun. Courtney ignored her. She spun the narrative tighter. He hit his wife too. Courtney lied, panning the camera to Beatrice's bruised face. Look at her. He beat her, and now he is beating us. We just came for Thanksgiving dinner, and he snapped. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Courtney smiled behind the phone. It was a small, vicious smile. Did you hear that, Cyrus? She hissed away from the microphone. That is the cavalry. Chief Miller is coming, and he hates you. He has always hated how uppity you are. She turned back to her audience. The police are here. Thank God. Please pray for us. Blue and red lights flashed through the front window, painting the walls in chaotic colors. Tires screeched in the driveway. Car doors slammed. This is the police, open up. It was Chief Miller's voice. Courtney ran to the door, flinging it open. Chief, help us, she screamed, throwing herself into his arms. He has mercenaries. He broke Dante's arm. Chief Miller stormed in. He is a big man with a red face and a history of looking the other way for the right price. Dante had been buying him steak dinners for 3 years. Miller had his hand on his holster. 2 deputies came in behind him, shotguns raised. Everybody freeze, Miller shouted. He saw Marcus. He saw Dante on the floor. He saw me. Get on the ground, Miller yelled at me. Cyrus Blackwood, get on your knees now. I did not move. I said, get down, Miller roared, unholstering his weapon and pointing it at my head. You are under arrest for aggravated assault and domestic battery. Marcus tensed, ready to intervene. I held up a hand to stop him. Chief Miller, I said calmly, before you make a mistake that ends your career, I suggest you look at the television. What are you talking about? Miller spat. Cuff him, boys. The deputies moved toward me. Wait, I said. My voice was not loud, but it had the weight of command. I picked up a remote control from the sideboard. I pointed it at the 80-inch screen mounted above the fireplace. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. It was black and white footage, high definition. It showed the dining room from 10 minutes ago. It showed Dante screaming. It showed Dante slapping Beatrice. It showed Beatrice falling. It showed Courtney clapping. It showed Dante pulling the gun. Miller froze. The deputy stopped halfway across the room. We all watched the video in silence. We watched Dante aim the gun at my chest. We watched Marcus disarm him. I paused the video on the frame where Dante was holding the gun to his father's heart. I turned to Miller. "Self-defense, Chief," I said. "Clear cut. Stand your ground. Castle doctrine. Pick your statute." Miller lowered his gun slightly. He looked at Dante moaning on the floor. He looked at Courtney, who had gone pale. Her phone still clutching in her hand, but the live stream paused. "But she said you beat your wife?" Miller stammered, pointing at Courtney. I fast-forwarded the video. It showed Dante hitting his mother. Miller's face turned a shade of purple. He realized he had been played. He realized he was about to arrest the victim on a lie. But he was stubborn. He was Dante's friend. "This is still excessive force," Miller grunted, trying to find a way out. "You hired thugs. That is a private military contractor. That is illegal." I sighed. I reached into my pocket. The deputies flinched. I pulled out my phone. "I am not calling my lawyer, Miller," I said. "I am calling your boss." "Who?" Miller asked. "The governor," I said. I dialed. I put it on speaker. It rang twice. Cyrus, a voice boomed. It was Governor Hastings. I helped him uncover a tax fraud ring in his opponent campaign 4 years ago. He owes me his seat. "Happy Thanksgiving, old friend." "Why are you calling so late?" "Governor," I said, "I have a situation. Chief Miller from the local precinct is in my living room. He is threatening to arrest me because my son pulled a gun on me and I defended myself." There was a silence on the line. A dangerous silence. "Put him on," the governor said. His voice was no longer friendly. It was steel. I held the phone out to Miller. Miller's hand shook as he took it. "Governor," he squeaked. "Miller," the governor voice thundered, filling the room. "If you put one finger on Cyrus Blackwood, I will have your badge, your pension, and your freedom by sunrise. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," Miller whispered. "Cyrus is the reason this state is not bankrupt," the governor continued. "He is a patriot. If he says it was self-defense, it was self-defense. Now clean up your mess and get out of there." Miller handed the phone back to me like it was made of lava. He turned to his deputies. "Put the cuffs away," Miller barked. He looked down at Dante. "Get up, Dante," Miller said, his voice cold. Dante looked up confused. "Miller, you have to help me. He broke my wrist." "You drew a weapon on a homeowner," Miller said, reciting the law to cover his own back. "You committed assault. You filed a false police report." Courtney tried to step in. "But Chief, the live stream." "Shut up," Miller snapped at her. "You lied to an officer. That is obstruction." He pointed at the door. "Get out," Miller ordered. "Both of you. Before I arrest you for attempted murder." Dante scrambled up, cradling his broken wrist. Courtney looked around, realizing her audience had turned on her, realizing her shield was gone. "But we have nowhere to go," Courtney wailed. "That is not police business," Miller said. "Get off the property, now!" Dante stumbled toward the door, leaning on Courtney. He looked back at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, only fear. I stood there watching them leave. My house was a mess. My wife was injured. My son was a criminal. But I was still standing. Miller tipped his hat to me. He looked terrified. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mr. Blackwood," Miller mumbled. "Sorry for the disturbance." He hustled his deputies out the door, leaving us in the silence of the aftermath. I looked at Beatrice. She was holding the ice pack, weeping softly. I walked over and sat down. "The live stream," I asked. Marcus checked his tablet. "It is still up, sir, but the comments have turned. Someone leaked the security footage you just showed. The internet knows the truth. They are tearing Courtney apart." "Good," I said, but I knew Dante. I knew his greed. He would not stop. He needed money. He needed a win. And if he could not get it from me, he would try to get it from the only other person I cared about. My phone pinged. A text message. It was not from Dante. It was from an automated security alert I had set up years ago. "Unauthorized entry detected. Location guest house." My blood ran cold. The guest house. That was where my grandson Leo slept when he visited. Dante did not just leave. He circled back. I looked at Marcus. "They took the boy," I said, standing up. The night had just turned from a battle into a war, and this time I was not going to aim for the wrist. The temperature dropped to 30 degrees that night. It was the kind of cold that bypasses the skin and settles directly into the bone. I watched the GPS tracker dot on my phone moving slowly down the main avenue. Dante and Courtney were walking. They had no choice. Their Uber accounts were suspended. Their cards were frozen. And nobody picks up hitchhikers in $3,000 suits on the side of the highway. They were dragging 2 Louis Vuitton suitcases that my security team had tossed onto the curb. I could only imagine the scene. Courtney was likely shivering in that thin silk dress, her heels clicking violently against the asphalt. Dante would be cradling his broken wrist, the pain medication wearing off and the reality of his situation setting in. They stopped under a streetlight 3 blocks from the city center. I tapped into the audio feed from Dante's phone. I had not cut his service yet. I wanted to hear them break. "This is your fault," Courtney screamed, her voice cracking against the wind. "You said he was senile. You said he was weak. You said we would have the money by dinner." "Shut up," Courtney Dante snapped back. I can hear the pain in his voice. My wrist is throbbing. "I need a doctor." "You need a brain," Courtney hissed. "You pulled a gun on him, Dante." "A gun? We are going to jail." "We are not going to jail," Dante argued, but he sounded unsure. "He is my father. He won't press charges. He just wanted to scare us. We just need to get to a hotel. We will sleep. We will regroup. Tomorrow I will call my contacts. I will fix this. Your contacts." Courtney laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Your contacts are his contacts, you idiot. You do not have friends. You have people who tolerate you because of your last name. And right now, that name is Mud." They kept walking. They were heading toward the Grand Oak Haven Hotel. It was the most expensive hotel in the city. Of course they were going there. Creatures of habit never change their stripes even when they are bleeding. They could have gone to a motel. They could have gone to a shelter. But their pride was still intact even if their bank accounts were not. They thought they could bluff their way into luxury. They thought the world still owed them comfort. I signaled Marcus. "Bring the car around. We are going to the Oak Haven." We arrived 10 minutes before they did. I entered through the service entrance and took the private elevator to the executive suite overlooking the lobby. I poured myself a glass of water and watched the security monitors. They walked through the revolving doors like refugees from a fashion show gone wrong. Dante was pale, sweating, and holding his arm. Courtney looked like a raccoon, her mascara smeared across her cheeks, her hair windblown and tangled. They approached the front desk. The night manager, a young man named Stephen, looked up. He maintained his professional smile, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. "Mr. Blackwood," Stephen said, "we were not expecting you tonight." "I need a suite," Dante demanded, leaning against the counter. "The presidential." "And send a doctor up immediately. I had an accident." "Of course," Sir Stephen said, typing on his keyboard. "Do you have your card on file?" "Just use the one on file," Dante snapped. "I am afraid that card was declined earlier this evening," Sir Stephen said, his voice polite but firm. "The system says reported lost or stolen. Do you have another form of payment?" Dante patted his pockets with his good hand. He pulled out a platinum card I had given him for emergencies. He slammed it on the marble counter. "Use this one, and hurry up." "My wife is freezing." Stephen took the card. He swiped it. Beep! The red light on the terminal flashed. "I am sorry," Sir Stephen said, sliding the card back. "This one is also declined. Code 05. Refer to issuer." Dante's face turned purple. "Try it again. It is a platinum card. It has no limit." "I have tried it twice," Sir Stephen said. "It is dead." Courtney shoved Dante aside. She slammed her hand on the counter. "Do you know who we are?" she shrieked. "This is Dante Blackwood. His father owns half this city. We stay here every month. Stop playing games and give us a key or I will have you fired. I want to speak to your manager." "I am the night manager, ma'am," Stephen said, his patience wearing thin. "And without a valid form of payment, I cannot check you in. Those are the rules." "Screw the rules," Dante yelled. He grabbed a vase of flowers from the counter and threw it. It shattered on the floor water and roses spilling everywhere. "Call the owner. Call him right now. Tell him Dante Blackwood is here, and if I do not get a room, I am going to burn this place down." Security started moving in. 2 large guards approached from the shadows. "Do not touch me!" Courtney screamed as a guard reached for her arm. "I will sue you. I will sue this entire hotel." I stood up in the executive suite. It was time. I walked out of the office and stood on the mezzanine balcony overlooking the lobby. "You want to speak to the owner, Dante," I called out. My voice echoed through the high ceilings of the lobby. Dante and Courtney froze. They looked up. When they saw me standing there looking down on them like a judge on a bench, the remaining color drained from their faces. "Dad," Dante whispered. "You called for the owner?" I said, walking down the grand staircase slowly. My cane tapped against the marble steps. Click, click, click. "Well, here I am." Courtney jaw dropped. "What are you talking about? You do not own this hotel. The conglomerate owns it." I smiled. "I am the conglomerate, Courtney," I said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "I bought the controlling stake in this hotel chain 6 years ago. I kept my name off the building because I prefer privacy. But make no mistake, I own the sheets you sleep on, I own the food you eat, and I own the ground you are standing on right now." Dante looked around the lobby. He saw the staff looking at me with deference. He realized I was telling the truth. "Dad, please," he whimpered, clutching his broken wrist. "I am hurt. We have nowhere to go. It is cold. Just give us a room. Just for one night." I looked at Stephen, the manager. "Stephen," I said. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood." "These 2 individuals are to be placed on the global blacklist," I said, my voice calm and carrying to every corner of the room. "They are banned from this property and every property in our portfolio worldwide. If they attempt to enter any of our hotels again, you are to call the police immediately for trespassing." "Yes, sir," Stephen said, making a note. Courtney stepped forward. "You cannot do that. I am a citizen. I have rights." I turned my gaze to her. "Actually, Courtney," I said, "I am glad you brought up citizenship." I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. "I made a call on the way over," I said. "I called my friend at the Department of Immigration. It seems there is a small irregularity with your visa status." Courtney froze. Her eyes went wide. "You see, I continued, your spousal visa is contingent on your marriage remaining in good standing and your husband having the financial means to support you. Since Dante is currently destitute and under investigation for fraud, and since I am about to file a formal petition to annul the marriage based on bad faith, your status is about to become very precarious." "You wouldn't," Courtney whispered. I looked at the security guards. "Remove them," I ordered, "and call immigration. Tell them we have a person of interest on the premises who has just made threats of arson." Dante tried to grab my arm. "Dad, no, stop, you are going too far." The guard grabbed Dante by the collar of his jacket. He dragged him backward. Dante screamed in pain as his broken wrist was jostled. Courtney was backing away, shaking her head. No, I am not going back. You cannot send me back." I turned my back on them. I walked over to the front desk. "Stephen," I said, ignoring the screams behind me. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood." "Send a bill for the broken vase to my office," I said, "and have housekeeping clean up this mess. It smells like desperation in here." I did not look back as they were thrown out into the cold for the second time that night. I heard the revolving doors spin. I heard the sirens in the distance. I took the elevator back up to the suite. I sat down and poured the water I had not finished. My hand was shaking slightly. Not from fear, from adrenaline. It is a terrible thing to destroy your own family. But it is a necessary thing when that family has become a cancer. I checked my phone. Strickland had sent a message. "The files are secure. The bank audit is complete. We have enough to put Dante away for 20 years. I closed my eyes. The street outside was quiet again. But I knew this was the eye of the storm. Courtney was cornered. Dante was broken. They would lash out. And tomorrow morning when the sun came up and the hangover set in, they would realize that the only card they had left to play was the one that would destroy us all. They would go for the nuclear option. They would try to destroy my name. Let them try. I built my name in the mud. A little more dirt would not hurt it. The sun had not even fully risen when the doorbell rang. It was a hesitant sound, not the aggressive pounding of the night before. Beatrice was sitting at the kitchen table nursing a cup of tea, her hand still trembling slightly when she lifted the mug. The bruise on her cheek had turned a dark, angry purple. I checked the security monitor. It was Courtney. She was alone. She was not wearing the designer silk dress from last night. She was wearing a pair of jeans and an oversized sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun and she wore no makeup. She looked like a college student who had just pulled an all-nighter. It was a costume. I knew it was a costume because I knew Courtney spent 2 hours every morning contouring her face just to go to the mailbox. "Do not answer it," Beatrice whispered. "I have to answer it." "Beatrice?" I said, checking the pistol tucked into my waistband at the small of my back. "If I do not, she will just stand there and scream until the neighbors call the police again. And I am tired of the police." I walked to the door and opened it. Courtney fell to her knees the moment the latch clicked. It was a theatrical drop, perfectly timed. She burst into tears before I could even say a word. "Oh God, Cyrus, please help me," she sobbed, clutching at the hem of my pants. I managed to get away from him. He is crazy. Dante is crazy. I looked down at her. I did not offer her a hand. I did not offer her comfort. I simply watched the performance. "Get up, Courtney," I said. "You are ruining the doormat." She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "You have to believe me, Cyrus." It was all him. He forced me to say those things. He forced me to live stream. He said if I did not help him get the money, he would hurt me. "He has a gun, Cyrus. You saw the gun." "I saw him pull a gun," I corrected. "I also saw you clap when he hit his mother. I saw you smile when you thought you were going to win." That did not look like fear, Courtney. That looked like participation. She shook her head violently. I was in shock. I was terrified. "You do not know what he is like behind closed doors. He beats me, Cyrus. He has been beating me for years." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "That is interesting," I said, "because I have the credit card statements for the last 5 years. I see thousands of dollars spent on spa treatments, facials, and massages. I see 0 charges for urgent care emergency rooms or concealer heavy enough to hide a bruise. Usually when a man is abusive, there is a paper trail of pain. With you, there is only a paper trail of pampering." Courtney's face hardened for a split second before she buried it in her hands again, wailing louder. "I ran away," she cried. "I left him at that Motel 6 on the highway. He passed out drunk. I took a cab here. I have nowhere else to go. Please, Cyrus, not for me, but for the baby." The air left the room. Beatrice appeared in the hallway behind me. She had heard. "What did you say?" Beatrice asked, her voice barely a whisper. Courtney looked past me, locking eyes with my wife. She knew exactly who the weak target was. "I am pregnant," Beatrice. Courtney choked out, clutching her stomach. "I am 10 weeks along. It is a boy. I saw the ultrasound. It is your grandson, the heir to the Blackwood name." I felt Beatrice move beside me. I felt her resolve crumbling. She looked at Courtney's stomach, then at Courtney's tear-stained face. The bruise on Beatrice's cheek seemed to throb, but the hope in her eyes was undeniable. A grandson. It was the one thing we had always wanted, the one thing money could not buy. "A baby," Beatrice whispered. "Yes," Courtney sobbed. "Please, Mom. Do not let your grandson grow up on the street. Dante does not care about him. He said he did not want another mouth to feed. But I want him. I want to be a mother. I want to make this right." Beatrice stepped forward, reaching out a hand. "Cyrus, she is pregnant. We cannot leave a baby out in the cold." I put my arm out, barring Beatrice's path. "She is not coming in." "Beatrice," I said. "Cyrus." Beatrice pleaded, tears filling her eyes. "It is a child, an innocent child. If she is telling the truth, we have a duty." I looked at Courtney. She was watching us, her eyes darting back and forth, calculating the odds. She saw Beatrice wavering and she pressed harder. "I will do anything Courtney promised. I will sign a prenup. I will divorce Dante. I will give you full custody if that is what you want. Just please let me in. I am hungry. The baby is hungry." I stared at her. I have interrogated men who stole millions from pension funds. I have stared down cartel accountants. I know a liar when I see one. But more importantly, I know a liar when I have the paperwork to prove it. "Strickland sent over the file this morning," I said quietly. Courtney blinked. "What file?" "The comprehensive medical audit," I said. I reached into the inside pocket of my cardigan. I pulled out a thin manila envelope. It was not thick, but it was heavy with truth. "You see, Courtney," I continued, "when you married my son, I did what any responsible father with a net worth of $50 million does. I hired a private investigator, not to follow you, just to keep an eye on things, to make sure you were safe, to make sure you were who you said you were." Courtney stopped crying. The tears turned off like a faucet. "I have access to your medical records," I said, tapping the envelope against my palm. "Not legally, of course, but money buys access. And according to the records from St. Jude Hospital in Los Angeles dated September 12th, 5 years ago, you underwent a very specific elective procedure." Courtney stood up slowly. She brushed the dirt off her knees. Her face was no longer that of a victim. It was the face of a poker player who just realized her opponent has a royal flush. "Tubal ligation," I said. "You had your tubes tied, Courtney. To preserve your figure for modeling. You told the doctor you never wanted children because they were, quote, parasites who ruin your waistline, unquote. Beatrice gasped, covering her mouth. You are sterile, Courtney, I said, my voice cold and hard. You cannot get pregnant. There is no baby. There is no grandson. There is just you and a lie you thought would get you back into the penthouse. Courtney stared at me. Her jaw worked, but no sound came out. And just for the sake of thoroughness, I added opening the envelope and pulling out a glossy photograph. I also have the surveillance photos from the Gold's Gym on 3rd Street. I held up the picture. It showed Courtney kissing a man who was definitely not Dante. He was a personal trainer named Chad. He was 25 years old and had a spray tan. This was taken 3 days ago, I said. While Dante was meeting with his imaginary investors, you were meeting with Chad in the locker room. Does Dante know you spent his last $5,000 on a watch for your boyfriend? Beatrice let out a sound of pure anguish. She turned and walked back into the kitchen, unable to look at the woman she had welcomed into our family. I tossed the photo at Courtney's feet. It landed face up in the dust. You are not a mother, I said. You are not a victim. You are a con artist who ran out of marks. Courtney looked down at the photo. Then she looked up at me. The transformation was complete. The sobbing girl was gone. In her place was a viper. She laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. You old bastard, she spat. You really do monitor everything, don't you? I monitor my investments, I said, and you were a bad investment. She stepped closer, getting right in my face. She smelled of stale vodka and cheap motel soap. You think you are so high and mighty? Courtney hissed. You think because you have money you can treat people like chess pieces. Well, I have news for you, Cyrus. You are not the only one with secrets. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Yes, it is, she said, her eyes narrowing. Dante talks in his sleep, and when he is drunk, he talks even more. He told me things, Dad. He told me about the 80s. He told me about where the money really came from. I did not blink. He told me about the prison time, she whispered, a cruel smile spreading across her face. He told me you did time in federal prison. 4 years. For fraud. She stepped back, looking triumphant. Imagine what the papers would do with that, she said. Cyrus Blackwood, the philanthropist, the pillar of the community, is actually an ex-con, a felon. How many of your charity boards would keep you on? How many of your high society friends would invite you to gala dinners if they knew you were a jailbird? I looked at her. I felt a strange sense of calm. She thought she had a nuclear bomb. She did not know she was holding a firecracker. You want $5 million, she demanded. Cash, transferred to an account in the Caymans. Or I go to the press. I will tell them everything. I will tell them you beat your son. I will tell them you starved us. And I will show them your mugshot. I will ruin your legacy, old man. I checked my watch. Are you done? I asked. She looked confused. What? Are you done threatening me? I repeated. Because I have a breakfast meeting in 20 minutes and I need to change my shirt. You do not believe me, she screamed. I will do it. I will destroy you. Courtney, I said, leaning in close. I went to prison 40 years ago. That is public record if you know where to look. I have never hidden it. I have never lied about it. But the story, she scoffed. The context. The context is none of your business, I said. But if you think you can blackmail me with my own past, you are sadly mistaken. I built this empire on the ashes of that prison sentence. I learned more in that cell than you will ever learn in your entire life. I took a step forward, forcing her to step back off the porch. Go to the press. I challenged her. Call TMZ. Call the New York Times. Tell them whatever you want. But remember one thing. What is that? She sneered. Defamation is a civil suit, I said. But extortion is a felony, and I am recording this conversation. I tapped the small camera lens embedded in the button of my cardigan. You are looking at 10 to 15 years, Courtney, I said. And unlike me, you will not survive prison. You are too soft. You are too pretty. And you are not smart enough to keep your mouth shut. Courtney's face went pale again. She looked at the button, then at my face. You are bluffing, she whispered. Try me, I said. She hesitated. For a moment I thought she might lunge at me again, but the fight had gone out of her. The blackmail had failed. The pregnancy lie had failed. She was out of cards. She turned around and walked down the driveway. She walked fast, stumbling a little. She did not look back. I watched her go until she turned the corner at the end of the block. I went back inside and locked the door. Beatrice was in the kitchen sitting at the table. She was not crying anymore. She looked numb. "She is gone," I said, sitting down across from her. "She lied about the baby," Beatrice asked, her voice flat. "Yes," I said. "She lied about everything." Beatrice nodded slowly. "And the prison time?" she asked. "You never talk about it." "We don't talk about it because it is over," I said. "It was a lifetime ago." "But she will tell people," Beatrice said worriedly. "She will try to hurt us." "Let her try," I said. My phone rang. It was Strickland. Mr. Blackwood Strickland said, "The press release is ready. Do you want to launch the preemptive strike?" I looked at my wife. I looked at the bruise on her face. I thought about my son and his wife and the wreckage they had made of our lives. "Launch it," I said. "What about the scheduled interview?" Strickland asked. "Keep it," I said. "Call the station. Tell them I am coming in. If Courtney wants to talk about the past, let's talk about the past. But let's tell the whole story. Let's tell them who her father really was." I hung up. Beatrice looked at me. "What are you going to do, Cyrus?" I stood up and smoothed my cardigan. "I am going to control the narrative, Beatrice," I said. "Courtney wants a war of reputation. She forgets that I know where the skeletons are buried because I am the one who dug the graves." But before I could leave the house, my phone rang again. It was Dante. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this wasn't a begging call. I picked up. "Hello, son." "You win, Dad," Dante said. His voice was calm, too calm. "You took the money. You took the house. You scared off Courtney." "I did what I had to do," I said. "Yeah, well, I am going to do what I have to do," Dante said. "What does that mean?" "It means you forgot about the one thing I still have," he said. "The one thing you actually care about." I frowned. "I took everything, Dante. You have nothing. I have Leo," he said. My heart stopped. Leo, my grandson. Dante's son from his first marriage. The only innocent thing in this entire mess. Leo lived with his mother in the city. I paid for his school. I paid for his housing. "What did you do, Dante?" I whispered. "I picked him up from school early," Dante said casually. "I told the teachers we were going on a surprise trip. He is with me now, Dad. We are in a van. We are driving. Where are you going?" "That depends on you," Dante said. "If you want to see Leo again, you are going to transfer $10 million into a crypto wallet. No banks, no tracing, just pure digital cash." "You kidnapped your own son," I roared. "I am taking him on a vacation," Dante laughed. "Unless you don't pay. Then it might become a tragedy. Accidents happen on the road, Dad. You know that. Do not hurt him, Dante." I warned, my hand gripping the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "If you touch a hair on his head—" "10 million, Dante interrupted. "You have 1 hour, or Leo pays the price for your greed." The line went dead. I stood there in the kitchen. The world tilted on its axis. My money meant nothing. My reputation meant nothing. My grandson was in the hands of a desperate man who had already proven he was capable of violence. Beatrice saw my face. "Cyrus," she gasped. "What is it?" "They have Leo," I said. "I did not call the police. I did not call the governor." I walked to the pantry and pushed aside the heavy shelf of canned goods. Behind it was a steel door with a biometric scanner. I placed my palm on the scanner. The door hissed open. Inside was not a panic room. It was a command center. Banks of monitors, server racks, and a wall of equipment that I had not touched since my days hunting cartels in Colombia. I walked in and typed a command into the main console. Beatrice followed me, her eyes wide. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I am activating the tracker," I said. "What tracker?" "The one inside the vintage watch I gave Leo for his birthday," I said. "I told him never to take it off." A red dot appeared on the map on the main screen. It was moving south on the interstate. I picked up a headset. "Strickland." "Get the cleaners," I said. "The cleaners," Beatrice whispered. "Cyrus, those men are killers." "No." "Beatrice," I said, loading a fresh magazine into a tactical pistol. "They are problem solvers, and we have a problem." I looked at the red dot. "Hold on, Leo," I whispered. "Grandpa is coming, and I am bringing hell with me." I watched Courtney walk away down the driveway, but I knew she was not walking toward defeat. She was walking toward a Wi-Fi signal. She had threatened to burn my legacy to the ground, and a woman like Courtney does not make idle threats when she is cornered. She pulled out her phone before she even reached the corner. I could see the glow of the screen against her face in the twilight. She was logging into her social media accounts, the ones with thousands of followers she bought with my money. She was going to post the mugshot. She was going to tell the world that Cyrus Blackwood, the man who built community centers and funded scholarships, was a federal convict. I turned to Beatrice. She was pale, wiping her hands on a dish towel over and over again. "She is going to do it," Beatrice whispered. "Everyone will know. Let them know," I said, buttoning my jacket. It is time they heard the whole story. I walked out to the car where Marcus was waiting. We did not go to the police station. We went to the Channel 8 news studio downtown. Strickland had already called ahead. The producer owed me a favor from a libel suit I settled for pennies on the dollar 3 years ago. By the time we arrived, Courtney Post was already viral, breaking the dark past of Cyrus Blackwood, felon, fraudster, abuser. She had attached the mugshot from 1984. I looked young in that photo, angry and scared. The comments were pouring in. People I had helped for decades were asking if it was true. The board members of my charities were texting me. The cancellation had begun. Courtney thought this was her checkmate. She thought shame would silence me. She forgot that shame is a luxury for people who have something to hide. I have nothing to hide. Not anymore. I walked onto the set. The lights were blindingly bright. The anchor woman, Sarah Jenkins, looked nervous. She had her tablet in front of her, displaying Courtney accusations. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "these are serious allegations. Your daughter-in-law claims you served 4 years in federal prison for securities fraud. Is this true?" I looked directly into the camera. I imagined Courtney watching this on her cracked phone screen in some cheap motel room. "Yes," I said clearly. "I went to prison. In 1984, I was sentenced to 5 years and served 4 at a minimum security facility in Danbury." The studio went silent. Sarah blinked, surprised by the admission. "But Courtney left out the most important part of that story," I continued, leaning forward. "She left out who I went to prison for." I pulled a weathered leather binder from my bag. It smelled of old paper and dust. I opened it to a document yellowed with age. "This is a plea agreement," I said, holding it up. "It is signed by me, but if you look at the witness line, you will see another name. Arthur Vane." Sarah squinted. "Arthur Vane, the real estate mogul who died 10 years ago." "Courtney father," I corrected. Sarah's eyes widened. "You see, I explained Arthur Vane was not a genius businessman. He was a thief. He was running a Ponzi scheme that targeted the pensions of steelworkers in this city. I was his junior accountant. I found the books. I found the missing millions." I paused, letting the weight of the history fill the room. When I confronted him, he gave me a choice. He told me he had friends who could make my young wife Beatrice disappear. He told me if I took the fall, if I signed the papers admitting to the fraud, he would let her live. I was 25 years old. I was terrified. So I signed. I went to prison for crimes he committed. I sat in a cell for 4 years to protect my wife while Arthur Vane became a billionaire on stolen money. I flipped the page to a bank transfer record. "This is the settlement Arthur paid me when I got out," I said. "Hush money, $2 million. He thought he was buying my silence forever. He thought I would drink it away. Instead, I used it to build a firm that hunts men exactly like him." I looked into the lens again, my gaze piercing. Courtney Vane is living on the money her father stole from the working-class people of this city. She is driving a car paid for by stolen pensions, and now she tries to use my sacrifice as a weapon against me. I closed the binder. "I have kept this secret for 40 years to protect the innocent people involved," I said. "But Courtney broke the truce. She wanted you to know I was a criminal. Now you know. I was a criminal so her father could die a hero. But the truth always has a way of digging itself out of the grave." The interview ended. The silence in the studio was absolute. Then the phone started ringing. All of them. I walked off the set. Marcus was waiting by the door holding his tablet. "Check the feed, sir," he said. I looked. The internet is a fickle beast. It turns on a dime. The comments that were attacking me 5 minutes ago were now flooding with apologies. The hashtag #CyrusTheHero was trending. But more importantly, the internet had found a new target. Courtney's social media was a war zone. People were digging up photos of her expensive vacations, her jewelry, her lifestyle. They were connecting the dots to her father crimes. They were calling for her to return the money. They were calling her the daughter of a thief. She is finished, Marcus said. She cannot show her face in this city again. I nodded. It did not feel like a victory. It felt like taking out the trash. Necessary but unpleasant. I got into the car. I was tired. I wanted to go home to Beatrice. I wanted to close the book on this terrible chapter of our lives. But the phone rang again. It was not a reporter. It was not a well-wisher. It was Dante. I stared at the screen. Why was he calling? He had lost. His wife was destroyed. He was destitute. I answered. "It is over, Dante," I said. "Do not call me again." He laughed. It was not the laugh of a defeated man. It was the high-pitched manic laugh of someone who has snapped. "Did you see the news, Dad?" he asked. "Did you see how you destroyed Courtney?" "She destroyed herself," I said. "Yeah, she did," Dante agreed. "She is crying in the bathroom right now. She says her life is over. She says she is going to kill herself." "That is not my problem, Dante." "No, it isn't," he said. "But your problem is sitting right next to me." I frowned. "What are you talking about? I told you I needed money." "Dad," Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I told you I was desperate, but you had to play the hero. You had to go on TV. You had to humiliate us. Dante, stop talking and tell me what you want. I want $10 million, Dante said, in Bitcoin, within the hour." I scoffed. "You are delusional. I am not giving you a cent." "Really?" Dante said. "Not even for Leo." My heart stopped beating. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Leo, my grandson. Dante's son from his first marriage. The boy lived with his mother Sarah on the other side of town. He was 5 years old. He was the only innocent thing in this entire mess. "What did you say?" I whispered. "I picked him up from school," Dante said casually. "I told the teachers it was a family emergency. Sarah does not know yet. We are in the van, Dad. We are going for a ride." "You kidnapped your own son," I roared. "I am taking him on a vacation," Dante corrected. "A permanent one, unless you pay." "Let me talk to him," I demanded. "Put him on," Dante said to someone in the background. "Hi, Grandpa," a small voice said. It was Leo. He sounded scared. "Daddy is driving really fast. He says we are going to see the ocean." "Leo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Listen to me. Everything is going to be fine. Grandpa is going to fix it." "That is enough," Dante said, snatching the phone back. "You heard him. He is alive. For now." "Dante," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "If you hurt him, if you even scare him." 10 million, Dante interrupted. 1 hour. Or the van goes off a bridge. I have nothing left to lose, Dad. You took it all. Now I take yours. The line went dead. I sat there in the back of the car, my phone clutched in my hand. The city lights blurred past the window. My victory at the TV station meant nothing. My reputation meant nothing. My son had become a monster. And he had my grandson. Marcus looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Sir," he asked, "where to?" I did not say home. I did not say the police station. I leaned forward. "Go to the safe house," I said. "The safe house, sir. The one with the equipment," I said. Marcus' eyes met mine in the mirror. He saw the look on my face. It was a look he had not seen since our days in Colombia hunting men who did not want to be found. "Yes, sir," he said. I looked at my phone. 59 minutes. Dante thought he was playing a game of leverage. He thought he was negotiating. He did not realize that by taking Leo, he had just signed his own death warrant. He was no longer my son. He was a target. And I never miss. Beatrice was hyperventilating. Her hands were gripping the granite countertop so hard her knuckles were white. She looked at me with eyes wide with a terror that no mother should ever have to know. "They have a child, Cyrus," she gasped. "Dante is unstable. He is on drugs or he is drunk. He is going to crash that van. We have to call the police. We have to call the FBI." "No police," I said, my voice cutting through her panic like a knife. "Police means sirens. Sirens mean a high-speed chase, and a chase ends in a wreck. We are doing this my way." I grabbed her arm gently but firmly and led her to the pantry. I pushed aside the heavy shelving unit that held her jars of homemade preserves. Behind it was a panel of reinforced steel painted to match the wall. I placed my hand on the biometric scanner. A green light flashed. With a hydraulic hiss, the wall slid open, revealing a staircase bathed in cool blue light. Beatrice stared into the abyss of my secret life. "What is this?" she whispered. "It is the reason we are still alive, Beatrice," I said, guiding her down the metal stairs. We descended into the bunker. It was not a dark, damp hole. It was a state-of-the-art command center hummed with the sound of server cooling fans. Banks of monitors covered the far wall. A table in the center was covered in maps and tactical gear. Beatrice looked around in disbelief. "You told me this was a wine cellar. You told me you were storing vintage reds down here." I lied. I said, walking to the main console. I typed in a sequence of codes. The screens flared to life. Beatrice walked over to a rack on the wall. It was not holding wine bottles. It was holding rifles, Kevlar vests, night vision goggles. "Cyrus," she said, her voice trembling, "who are you really? You are an accountant. You audit companies." "I was never just an accountant, Beatrice," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "I was a cleaner. I fixed messes for people who could not call the police. And now I am going to fix this." I pulled up the tracking software. The map of the city appeared. A single red beacon was pulsing on the screen. Beatrice looked at the map. "Is that Leo?" "Yes," I said. "How?" I turned to her. "You remember the watch I gave him for his 5th birthday? The one you said was too bulky for a child." Beatrice nodded. "The diving watch. I gutted the internals," I explained. "I replaced the movement with a military-grade GPS tracker and a microphone. It has a 5-year battery life. It is waterproof, shockproof, and Dante-proof." I tapped a key. The audio feed from the watch filled the room. We could hear the hum of tires on pavement. We could hear the radio blaring heavy metal music. And we could hear Leo crying softly in the back seat. "Shut up!" Dante's voice barked over the speakers. "Stop crying or I will give you something to cry about." Beatrice covered her mouth to stifle a sob. I looked at the map. The red dot had stopped moving. They were at the old shipping yards down by the river. It was an industrial wasteland of rusted containers and abandoned warehouses. Perfect for a drop-off. Perfect for a murder. I picked up the secure phone on the desk. I did not dial 911. I dialed a number that did not exist in any phone book. Identify a voice answered instantly. No greeting, just readiness. "Blackwood. Authorization Alpha 9. Go ahead, sir." "I need the cleaners," I said. "Full tactical loadout. Hostage situation. Target is a 5-year-old male. Hostiles are armed and erratic. Location is the shipyard Sector 4. "We are rolling," the voice said. "ETA 6 minutes. I hung up. I walked to the weapon rack. I took down a tactical vest and strapped it on over my cashmere cardigan. I checked the magazine of my sidearm. I grabbed a flashbang grenade and hooked it to my belt. "Cyrus," Beatrice said, grabbing my arm. "You are 70 years old. You cannot go out there. Let the men handle it." I looked at her. I touched her cheek. "He is my blood, Beatrice," I said. "And Dante is my mistake. I have to be the one to finish it." I kissed her forehead. "Lock the door behind me," I ordered. "Do not open it for anyone but me or Marcus." I turned and walked up the stairs. I was not an old man anymore. I was a weapon. And I was aimed at the heart of my son. The night air at the shipyard smelled of salt and diesel fuel. My black SUV rolled silently to a stop behind a stack of shipping containers. Marcus was driving. He killed the lights. 3 black vans pulled up alongside us. The side doors slid open. 12 men stepped out. They were not young men. They were veterans. Men in their 40s and 50s. Men I had helped when the government forgot them. I paid for their surgeries. I paid for their mortgages. They were loyal to the bone. The team leader, a scarred man named Ghost, walked over to my window. Sir Ghost said, "We have thermal on the warehouse. 4 heat signatures. 1 small one sitting in the corner. 3 large ones patrolling." "Dante hired muscle," I said, stepping out of the car. "He does not have friends, so he probably scraped the bottom of the barrel." "Local thugs." "Rules of engagement?" Ghost asked. I checked my weapon. "The boy is priority 1, I said. "The hostiles are expendable." "Hostiles are. But I want Dante alive. I want him to look me in the eye when he loses." Ghost nodded. He signaled his team. They moved like smoke blending into the shadows of the containers. I moved with them. My joints ached. My breath was short, but my hands were steady. We approached the main sliding door of the warehouse. It was rusted shut, but there was a smaller service door slightly ajar. Ghost held up a hand. He held up 3 fingers. 2. 1. He breached the door. The team flowed into the warehouse. I followed close behind Marcus, shielding me with his body. The warehouse was a cavern of shadows. In the center, under a single hanging bulb, sat a white van. Leo was sitting on the floor next to it, his knees pulled up to his chest. 3 men were standing around him smoking cigarettes. They looked like cheap gangsters' leather jackets and visible tattoos. Dante was pacing back and forth, shouting into his phone. "Where is the money?" he was screaming. "It has been an hour." One of the thugs saw us. He raised a shotgun. "Hey, we got company," he yelled. He did not finish the sentence. Ghost dropped him with a single non-lethal round to the chest. A beanbag slug that hit with the force of a sledgehammer. The thug folded wheezing. The other 2 thugs scrambled for their weapons. "Flash out," Marcus shouted, throwing a canister into the center of the room. I closed my eyes and covered my ears. Bang! A blinding white light filled the warehouse, followed by a deafening concussive boom. When I opened my eyes, the thugs were on the ground, clutching their ears and eyes disoriented and blind. My team was on them in seconds, Zip tying their hands and securing their weapons. Dante was stumbling around, waving his gun blindly. "I cannot see," he screamed. "I cannot see." Ghost moved in behind him and kicked the back of his knee. Dante collapsed. Ghost kicked the gun away. I did not stop for Dante. I walked straight through the smoke toward the small figure huddled on the floor. Leo looked up. His eyes were wide with terror. He was trembling. "Grandpa," he whispered. I holstered my gun. I knelt down on the dirty concrete floor. I opened my arms. "I am here, Leo," I said. "Grandpa is here." He threw himself into my arms, burying his face in my chest. He smelled like fear and innocence. I held him tight, feeling his small heart beating like a trapped bird against my ribs. "It is okay," I whispered, stroking his hair. "The bad men are gone. You are safe." I stood up, lifting him effortlessly. The adrenaline gave me the strength of a man half my age. "Take him to the car," I told Marcus. "Get him ice cream, get him whatever he wants. Just get him out of here." Marcus nodded, taking Leo gently from my arms. "I want to go home," Leo cried, reaching back for me. "You are going home, son," I said. "Marcus is going to take you to Grandma. I will be there soon." I watched Marcus carry my grandson out of the warehouse. Then I turned around. The smoke was clearing. The 3 thugs were lined up against the wall, groaning. Dante was on his knees in the center of the room. His vision was clearing. He looked up and saw me. He did not look sorry. He looked furious. "You ruined everything." He spat blood trickling from his lip where he had bitten it during the fall. "You ruined my life." I walked over to him. I looked down at the son I had raised, the son I had protected. "I did not ruin your life, Dante," I said, my voice echoing in the empty warehouse. "I just stopped paying for it." He laughed, a wet gurgling sound. "You think this is over?" he sneered. "You think you can just arrest me? I know things, Dad. I know about the shell companies. I know about the offshore accounts. If I go down, I am taking your empire with me." I signaled to Ghost. "Bring him to the chair," I said, pointing to an old rusted chair in the corner. Dante's eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" he stammered. "The police. You have to call the police." "I am not calling the police yet," I said, walking toward him. "You wanted to play the gangster Dante. You wanted to kidnap children and make demands. Well, now you are in the big leagues. And in the big leagues, we do not call the cops until we have cleaned up the mess." Ghost dragged Dante to the chair and zip-tied his hands to the back. I pulled up a crate and sat down in front of him. We were knee to knee. "Now," I said, leaning forward, "let us talk about those contracts you signed in my name. Because before I hand you over to the FBI, I need to know exactly how deep of a hole you have dug for yourself." Dante swallowed hard. He looked at the hard faces of the veterans surrounding him. He looked at me. And for the first time that night, he realized that his father was not the victim. His father was the judge, the jury, and the executioner. "Start talking, son," I said, "or we are going to be here a long time." The rusty metal chair groaned under Dante's weight as he shifted, trying to find a comfortable position for his zip-tied wrists. His lip was swollen and a line of dried blood ran down his chin, but his eyes were bright with a manic, feverish light. He looked at me and he laughed. It was a wet, broken sound that echoed off the corrugated steel walls of the warehouse. "You think this is it?" he wheezed, spitting a glob of blood onto the concrete. "You think tying me up solves your problem? You have no idea what I have done, Dad. You have no idea what I have signed." I sat on the crate opposite him, my hands resting on my knees. I watched him with the patience of a man who has spent 40 years unraveling complex financial knots. "Enlighten me, Dante," I said. Dante grinned, exposing red-stained teeth. "I leveraged the company. Blackwood Holdings. I signed a merger agreement last week with a development firm in Dubai. I put up the entire portfolio as collateral. If I do not show up for the closing tomorrow, the deal falls through. The penalties alone will bankrupt you." He leaned forward as much as the restraints would allow, his eyes widening with triumph. "I signed everything in your name," he hissed. "I have your power of attorney, remember? I forged it 3 years ago. If I go to prison, you go to the poorhouse. I burned the ship's dad. If I sink, you sink with me. So you are going to cut these ties. You are going to give me the money, and you are going to thank me for not ruining your legacy." I stared at him. I looked at the arrogance that had survived even a tactical takedown. He truly believed he was the smartest man in the room. He truly believed he held the detonator. "Is that all?" I asked. Dante blinked, confused by my lack of panic. "Is that all? Dad, I just told you I put a $50 million lien on your company. I signed promissory notes. I took out loans against the equity of the headquarters. I have buried you in so much paper you will never dig your way out. You need me to fix this." I stood up slowly. I walked over to the small table where Ghost had placed my leather satchel. I opened it and pulled out a single thin blue folder. I walked back to Dante and held it up. "You see this, Dante?" I asked. "What is that?" he sneered. "My personnel file." "No," I said. "This is the incorporation document for Blackwood Holdings, LLC, the company you have been CEO of for 5 years, so what he said." I opened the folder. "Read the second paragraph," I said, holding it in front of his face. Dante squinted. "It says it is a limited liability company." "Keep reading," I said. He scanned the legal jargon. His eyes stopped moving. He frowned. "Sole asset holding none," he read slowly. "Purpose educational simulation and non-equity management." He looked up at me. "I do not understand. We have assets. We have the building. We have the fleet. We have the accounts." I closed the folder with a sharp snap. "No, Dante," I said. "We do not." I pulled up a stool and sat down directly in front of him, knee to knee. "You see, son, when I handed you the keys to the kingdom, I knew you were not ready. I knew you were greedy. I knew you were lazy. So I did not give you the kingdom. I gave you a sandbox." Dante shook his head. "But the office, the employees. The office is leased by my personal trust," I explained. "The employees are paid by a separate payroll company owned by me. Blackwood Holdings. The company you run, the company you just leveraged to the hilt, owns absolutely nothing. It is a shell company, Dante. It is a ghost. It has 0 assets, 0 equity, and 0 value." Dante's face went slack. "But the loans, the contracts, I signed them." "Yes, you did," I said. "And since Blackwood Holdings has no collateral to back those loans, do you know who becomes liable for the debt?" He stared at me, breathing shallowly. "The signatory," I said, pointing a finger at his chest. "You." Dante shook his head violently. "No. No. I signed as CEO. The corporate veil protects me." I laughed. It was a cold sound. The corporate veil only exists if the corporation is solvent, Dante. But here is the kicker. Since you forged my signature on the power of attorney, which I can prove with forensic handwriting analysis, you committed fraud. Fraud pierces the corporate veil instantly. Those loans you took out, that merger penalty, the $50 million in debt, it does not belong to me. It does not belong to Blackwood Holdings. It belongs to you, personally. Dante started to hyperventilate. "No, that is impossible. It is accounting 101, I said relentlessly. "You did not bankrupt me, Dante. You bankrupted yourself. You owe $50 million to banks and developers, and you do not have a dime to your name. You are not a businessman. You are just a man with a very expensive signature and no way to pay for it." Dante slumped in the chair. The fight drained out of him, leaving only a hollow, terrified shell. "I am ruined," he whispered. I stood up and walked away from him, turning my back. "Oh, son," I said, looking at the dark corners of the warehouse. "Being ruined by the banks is the least of your problems. Banks just sue you. Banks just take your future wages. Banks follow the law." I turned back to him. "But you did not just borrow from banks, did you?" Dante's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with a primal fear. I know about the bridge loans, Dante, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I audited your personal ledger. When the banks stopped giving you cash, you went to the street. You borrowed $2 million from the Vipers. Dante began to struggle against the zip ties. Dad, wait. The Vipers are not bankers, I continued. They do not send demand letters. They send men with baseball bats and blowtorches. They do not care about shell companies. They care about their money. And you told them you were good for it because your father was Cyrus Blackwood. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the dim light. I just sent a text message, I said, showing him the screen. Dante squinted. Who did you text? A man named Sergey, I said. I believe he handles collections for the Vipers. I sent him a GPS pin. Dante screamed. No, Dad, no. You cannot do that. They will kill me. They will cut me into pieces. I put the phone back in my pocket. You threatened my wife, I said. You kidnapped my grandson. You pulled a gun on me. You tried to destroy my life. Did you really think I would protect you from yours? Please, Dante begged, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the blood and snot. Please, Dad. I am sorry. I will do anything. I will go to prison. Call the police. Please call the police. Do not let them take me. I checked my watch. Sergey is very efficient, I said. He is usually about 10 minutes away. I signaled to Ghost and the rest of the team. Pack it up, I ordered. We are leaving. Wait! Dante shrieked, struggling so hard the chair rocked on its legs. You cannot leave me here. You cannot leave me for them. I am your son. I stopped at the heavy metal door. I looked back at him one last time. My son died a long time ago, I said. You are just a bad investment that finally came due. We walked out into the cool night air. The heavy metal door slammed shut, sealing Dante in with his darkness. Ghost looked at me as we walked to the SUV. Are the Vipers really coming, sir? He asked. I nodded. They are coming. But I did not tell Ghost the whole truth. I had sent the location to the Vipers, yes. But 5 minutes before that, I had sent the same location to someone else. I had sent it to the FBI. I wanted Dante to feel the terror of the mob coming for him. I wanted him to sweat and scream and pray for the police, but I did not want him dead. Death was too easy. I wanted him in a federal cell for the next 20 years thinking about the empire he threw away. I got into the car. Let us go, I said. As we drove away, I saw headlights in the distance. 2 distinct groups of cars approaching the warehouse from opposite directions. The collision was inevitable. And Dante was right in the middle of it. The headlights that cut through the darkness of the shipyard were blinding. Dante squeezed his eyes shut and curled into a fetal position against the rusty chair. He was sobbing. He was begging. He thought the Vipers had arrived with their blowtorches and their pliers to collect the $2 million he did not have. He screamed for mercy. He screamed that he would pay them double if they just let him live. He screamed that it was all my fault. I stood by my SUV and watched him. I watched the son I had raised reduce himself to a puddle of cowardice. It was a pathetic sight. But the men stepping out of the approaching vehicles were not wearing leather jackets. They were wearing windbreakers with 3 yellow letters emblazoned on the back. FBI. I had not called the Vipers to kill him. I had called the Vipers to scare him, but I had called the FBI to end him. Federal agents, drop your weapons. My team, the cleaners, had already holstered their guns. They stepped back, hands visible professionals to the end. They knew the drill. Dante opened his eyes. He blinked in the harsh glare of the tactical lights. He saw the badges. He saw the federal warrants. It is the feds, he whispered. His voice was filled with a confusing mixture of relief and horror. He was not going to die tonight, but his life as a free man was over. Agent Miller, the lead investigator on the RICO case I had been quietly feeding evidence to for 6 months, walked over to Dante. He did not look impressed. Dante Blackwood, Agent Miller said, cutting the zip ties only to replace them with steel handcuffs. You are under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and the kidnapping of a minor across state lines. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Dante looked at me. His face was streaked with dirt and tears. You set me up, he hissed. You called them. I did not set you up, Dante. I said, my voice carrying over the sound of the wind coming off the water. I just turned on the lights. You are the one who built the cockroach's nest. They dragged him to the back of a federal sedan. He fought them a little, kicking and screaming about his rights, about his lawyer, about his father being the real criminal. It was useless. The agents had been watching him for weeks thanks to the dossier I sent them. They knew exactly who he was. I watched the taillights fade into the distance. Ghost, the leader of my security team, stood beside me. "That is a hard thing to do," Sir Ghost said quietly. "Sending your own blood to the cage." "It is the only way to save him from himself," Ghost, I replied. "In prison he cannot borrow money from the mob. In prison he cannot hurt his mother. It is a rescue mission. It just does not feel like one." I got into my car. "Go to the federal building," I told Marcus. "I want to be there when they start asking questions." The interrogation room was cold. It smelled of coffee and nervous sweat. I stood behind the two-way mirror with Strickland, my lawyer. We watched Dante. He was sitting at the metal table, still in his torn suit, looking like a man who had lost everything. He was not staying silent. He was talking a mile a minute. "It was my father," Dante told the agents, his eyes wide and desperate. "Cyrus Blackwood. He is the mastermind. I was just a figurehead. He used me to sign the papers. He used me to move the money. He is the one you want. He has offshore accounts in Panama. He has shell companies. I can testify. I can give you everything if you cut me a deal." Agent Miller looked at his partner. They did not write anything down. They just let him talk. "He forced me to kidnap my son." Dante lied, the words tumbling out of his mouth like vomit. "He said if I did not bring Leo to him, he would cut me off. He is a monster. He is controlling. He set this whole thing up to frame me because I found out about his tax evasion. I listened to my son try to bury me. I listened to him invent crimes I had never committed to cover the ones he had. It did not hurt anymore. The part of me that could be hurt by him had died when he slapped Beatrice. Now I was just an accountant watching an audit go bad." "Ready?" Mr. Blackwood, Strickland asked, holding a heavy steel briefcase. "Ready," I said. We opened the door. Dante stopped talking mid-sentence. He stared at us. "What is he doing here?" Dante screamed, jumping up. "I am giving you evidence against him. Arrest him." "Sit down, Mr. Blackwood," Agent Miller ordered. Dante sat, breathing hard. Strickland placed the steel briefcase on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. It was black, reinforced, and locked with a biometric pad. "What is that?" Dante asked, his voice trembling. "This," Strickland said, placing his thumb on the scanner, "is your life, Dante. Or rather, the life you tried to hide." The case hissed open. Inside were 10 hard drives neatly labeled by year. 2014 to 2024. "We call this the black box," I said, stepping forward. Dante looked at the drives. He looked at me. "You see, son," I continued, "when you started asking for money 10 years ago, I had a feeling. Call it a father's intuition, or call it 40 years of catching thieves. So I did what I do best. I started a file. I picked up the drive labeled 2019. This one contains the audio recordings of every phone call you made from the company phone I paid for," I said, "including the calls to the bookies, including the calls to the drug dealers, including the call where you told Courtney that you wished I would have a heart attack so you could get the trust fund early." Dante's face went white. "That is illegal. You cannot record me." "It was a company phone," Dante, Strickland interjected smoothly. "The user agreement you signed without reading clearly states that all communications are subject to monitoring for quality assurance. We have quality assured you all the way to a felony conviction." I put the drive back and picked up a thick binder of bank statements. "And this," I said, opening it to a page flagged with red tape, "is the forensic audit of your personal accounts. It shows the transfers from the shell company to your personal crypto wallet. It shows the payments to the Vipers. It shows the forgery of my signature on the loan documents." I leaned across the table. "I did not just watch you drown, Dante," I whispered. "I documented the water level rising, every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I kept it all. I was waiting for you to turn it around. I was waiting for you to grow up. Instead, you tried to kill your mother." Dante slumped in his chair. He looked at the mountain of evidence. He looked at the agents who were now looking at him not as a witness but as a prey. "You knew," Dante whispered. "You knew the whole time. I knew everything I said." "Then why," he asked, tears welling up in his eyes, "why did you let me go this far?" "Because you had to choose your own fate," I said, "and you chose greed." Dante put his head on the table and began to weep. It was the sound of a man realizing there was no one left to blame. Agent Miller stood up. "We have enough," Miller said. "With this evidence, we are looking at 20 years minimum. Federal sentencing guidelines are harsh on money laundering, especially when it involves kidnapping." Dante's head snapped up. "Wait," he said. "Wait. I can give you someone else." I looked at him. He was still trying to deal. He was still a rat. "Who?" Miller asked. "Courtney," Dante said. My wife. She is in on it. She pushed me, she spent the money, and she is running. I know she is running, I said. But where is she going, Dante? She has a flight, Dante said quickly, eager to sell out the woman he married. Tonight, to Zurich. She has the jewelry. What jewelry? I asked, my voice sharpening. Mom's jewelry, Dante said. The emeralds, the vintage diamonds. She took them from the safe in the bedroom while you were at the TV station. She said they were her insurance policy. She is at JFK right now. I looked at Strickland. Beatrice's jewelry. Her mother's heirlooms. The pieces I had given her for our anniversaries. Courtney had raided our home while we were defending our name. Call the Port Authority, I told Miller. Already on it, Miller said, speaking into his radio. I looked at Dante one last time. You just sent your wife to prison to save 5 years off your sentence, I said. She is not my wife, Dante spat. She is an accomplice, and she is not going to spend my money while I rot in a cell. I turned and walked out of the interrogation room. I could not look at him anymore. The sickness in his soul was too deep. We drove to the airport, not to stop her myself, but to make sure the job was done. We sat in the SUV outside the international terminal. I watched the live feed from the airport security cameras on Strickland's tablet. Courtney was in the first-class lounge. She was drinking champagne. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, looking every bit the grieving victim fleeing a tragedy. She checked her watch. She looked nervous but triumphant. She thought she had escaped. She thought she had the last laugh. She did not see the agents until they were standing right in front of her. I watched on the screen as 2 female agents approached her table. Courtney stood up indignant. She started shouting. I could not hear the audio, but I could read her lips. Do you know who I am? Then the agents opened her carry-on bag. They pulled out a velvet pouch. They dumped it on the table. Even on the grainy security footage, the sparkle was unmistakable. Beatrice's emerald necklace, the diamond brooding, the pearls from our wedding day. Courtney's face crumbled. She tried to run. She actually tried to run in heels on the polished floor of the lounge. They tackled her before she made it 3 steps. The champagne glass shattered on the floor. Her sunglasses flew off. They cuffed her hands behind her back while she screamed at the ceiling. Strickland closed the tablet. Target secured. Strickland said, grand larceny, possession of stolen goods, attempting to flee the jurisdiction. She is looking at 10 years plus deportation. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. It was over. The empire of lies my son and his wife had built was gone. They were in custody. The money was accounted for. My grandson was safe with his mother. But as the adrenaline faded, the exhaustion set in. I was 70 years old. I had just orchestrated the destruction of my own family. Take me home, Marcus, I said. The car pulled away from the curb. I watched the airport disappear in the rearview mirror. I felt lighter but also hollow. I had won the war. But the cost of victory was silence. The silence of an empty house. The silence of a legacy with no heir. But then I thought of Leo. I thought of the way he held on to me in the warehouse. Maybe the legacy was not dead. Maybe it just skipped a generation. I took out my phone and sent a text to Beatrice. They are caught. I am coming home. Put the kettle on. We had a lot of work to do. We had to rebuild. But this time we would build on a foundation of truth. And we would be careful about who we let in the front door. The courthouse was a circus. That is the only word for it. Outside on the steps, protesters were holding signs. Some supported me, but many others supported Dante and Courtney. Their lawyers had done a masterful job of poisoning the well before the jury was even seated. They painted a picture of a controlling patriarch, a bitter old man who could not stand that his son had married a white woman. They spun a narrative of reverse racism and toxic parenting. They called me a tyrant who used money to enslave his children. I watched from the window of the witness waiting room. I saw Dante arriving in a suit his lawyers had bought him since I had confiscated his. He looked frail. He looked like a victim. He was playing the part perfectly, walking with a limp that I knew was fake. Courtney was beside him wearing modest clothes, no makeup, her hair in a simple ponytail. She looked like a repentant Sunday school teacher, not the woman who had tried to blackmail me with my own prison record. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy. The defense attorney was a man named Sterling. He was expensive, flashy, and known for turning criminals into martyrs. In his opening statement, he did not talk about the kidnapping or the fraud. He talked about emotional abuse. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Sterling said, pacing in front of the box, you will hear about money. You will hear about contracts. But what you are really seeing is a tragedy of control. Cyrus Blackwood used his wealth as a weapon. He created a world where his son could not breathe without permission. And when his son tried to break free, when he tried to build a life with the woman he loved, Cyrus Blackwood destroyed him. I sat at the prosecution table next to Strickland. I did not react. I did not frown. I watched the jury. I saw them nodding. They were buying it. Everyone loves an underdog story, and Sterling was selling Dante as the ultimate underdog fighting against a corporate giant. The media was eating it up. The headlines were already written. The tycoon versus the son. It was a soap opera, and I was the villain. Even some of the reporters who had praised me weeks ago were now writing articles questioning my parenting methods. They asked if my controlling nature had pushed Dante to desperation. It was a brilliant strategy. If they could make the jury believe that Dante acted out of fear and desperation rather than greed, they might get a hung jury. They might get a mistrial. They might walk free. Dante looked at me from the defense table. He offered a small, sad smile. It was the smile of a man who thinks he has found a loophole. He thought he could charm his way out of a felony. He thought he could manipulate 12 strangers the way he had manipulated his mother for 40 years. But he forgot one thing. I am an accountant, and accountants do not rely on charm. We rely on receipts. When the prosecutor called my name, I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I walked to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Sterling stood up to cross-examine me. He came out swinging. Mr. Blackwood, Sterling said, "Is it true that you controlled every aspect of your son's life? Is it true that you decided where he lived, what he drove, and even where he worked?" I leaned into the microphone. "I did not control his life," I said calmly. "I financed it." Sterling scoffed. "Financed it? You owned him. You kept him dependent on you so you could pull the rug out whenever you wanted. You created a state of arrested development." I looked at the jury. I saw a middle-aged woman in the front row. She looked skeptical. I decided to speak directly to her. "I did not create a state of development," I said. "I created a safety net, and my son decided to use it as a hammock." Sterling tried to interrupt, but I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a thick leather-bound ledger. It was old, heavy, and filled with my handwriting. "Your Honor," I said, turning to the judge, "the defense claims I was a tyrant who starved his son of independence. They claim I withheld resources. I would like to submit this ledger into evidence. Exhibit G." The judge nodded. "Proceed." I opened the book. The pages crackled in the silent courtroom. "This is a record of every single dollar I have spent on Dante Blackwood since he turned 18, I said. I started reading. I did not use flowery language. I used numbers. Numbers do not lie. Numbers do not have bias. 2004. Freshman year at Yale. Tuition room board and discretionary spending. $85,000, plus a $20,000 settlement paid to the university to cover up a plagiarism incident so he would not be expelled. Dante shifted in his seat. 2008. Graduation gift. A Porsche 911. $90,000. Totaled 3 months later while driving under the influence. Legal fees to keep it off his record. $50,000. Replacement vehicle. $60,000. The jury started to shift. The skeptical woman raised an eyebrow. 2012. Seed money for his first startup, a tech venture that never produced a product. $2 million. Gone in 6 months. No receipts, no audit trail. Just gone. Sterling jumped up. Objection. Relevance. It goes to the character of the defendant and the nature of our financial relationship, the judge ruled. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Blackwood. I turned the page. 2015. Purchase of the penthouse apartment, $4 million. Renovations requested by Courtney, $1.5 million, including a $50,000 temperature-controlled closet for her furs. I looked at Courtney. She shrank into her seat, pulling her cardigan tighter. 2018. Gambling debts paid to an organization in Las Vegas to prevent kneecap removal, $500,000. The courtroom gasped. 2022. Hush money paid to a young woman who worked as his assistant. I will not go into details out of respect for her privacy, but the check was for $300,000. I kept reading. I read for 20 minutes. Cars, vacations, failed businesses, rehab stints, legal bribes, jewelry. I reached the final page. Total expenditure over 20 years, I said, looking up, $15,422,000. I closed the book. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I looked at Dante. He was staring at the table, his face burning red. I did not control him, I said to the jury. I enabled him. I loved him so much that I shielded him from every consequence of his actions. I paid for his mistakes. I paid for his crimes. I paid for his lifestyle. I paused, letting the weight of the number sink in. $15 million. I do not regret the money, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I can make more money. Money is just paper. What I regret is what the money did. I regret that I funded his corruption. I regret that I taught him that there is no problem a check cannot solve. I looked directly at my son. I do not regret the cost, I whispered into the microphone. I regret that I paid $15 million to turn my own son into a monster. And now I have to pay the emotional cost of putting that monster in a cage where he cannot hurt anyone else. Sterling stood there stunned. His narrative of the poor oppressed son had just been buried under a mountain of cash. He tried to pivot. He tried to stutter a question about emotional support versus financial support, but he had lost the room. The jury was looking at Dante not as a victim, but as a parasite, a spoiled, dangerous parasite who had bitten the hand that fed him until it bled. But the defense had one last card to play. Sterling regrouped. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his voice hard, "you talk about money, but let us talk about violence. You claim self-defense in your home. You claim your son was the aggressor. But we only have your word and the word of your paid mercenaries." "No," I said. "We have more than that." I nodded to the prosecutor. "Your Honor, the state calls for the introduction of Exhibit H, the security footage from the Blackwood dining room on Thanksgiving night." Sterling objected immediately. "That footage is prejudicial. It is edited. It is taken out of context." The judge reviewed the file. "It is time-stamped. It is continuous. It is admissible. Play it." The lights in the courtroom dimmed. A large screen descended from the ceiling. The video began to play. It was silent at first, then the audio kicked in. The jury watched as Dante screamed at us. They heard the entitlement in his voice. They heard Courtney cruel laughter. And then they saw it. They saw Beatrice, my wife, the woman who had baked them pies and knit them sweaters, sitting in her chair trembling. They saw Dante tower over her. They saw him pull back his hand. And they saw him strike her. The slap sounded like a thunder clap in the quiet courtroom. It was violent. It was vicious. It was the act of a coward. Beatrice fell to the floor. The entire courtroom recoiled. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The skeptical woman in the jury box covered her mouth with her hand. A man in the back row stood up and sat back down, muttering a curse. Then they saw Courtney. They saw her clap. That was the nail in the coffin. Whatever sympathy the jury might have had, whatever doubt Sterling had managed to sow about toxic parenting, evaporated in that split second. They did not see a misunderstood son. They saw a man beating his elderly mother. They did not see a supportive wife. They saw a sociopath cheering him on. I looked at Dante. He was refusing to look at the screen. He was staring at his hands, the same hands that had struck the woman who gave him life. The video continued. It showed the gun. It showed the threat. It showed Marcus taking him down. But nobody was watching that part. They were still processing the slap. The image of Beatrice on the floor, her glasses broken, her face confused and terrified, was burned into their retinas. The lights came back up. The prosecutor stood. "No further questions, Your Honor." I stepped down from the witness stand. I walked past the defense table. I did not look at Dante. I did not look at Courtney. I looked at Beatrice sitting in the front row. She was crying silently. I went to her and took her hand. "It is over, Beatrice," I whispered. "They saw. They know." Sterling tried to salvage his closing argument, but it was useless. He was speaking to a wall of stone. The jury would not look him in the eye. They would not look at Dante. They looked at the door to the deliberation room, ready to end this. Dante knew it too. He slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. He knew that $15 million could buy a lot of things, but it could not buy unseeing what that jury had just seen. He was done, and he knew it. The gavel did not make a loud noise when it hit the wood block, but the sound reverberated through my life like a thunderclap closing a 40-year storm. Judge Harrison looked down at the defense table over his spectacles. He did not look angry. He looked disappointed. He had seen the evidence. He had seen the slap. He had seen the financial rape of a family trust. The defendant, Dante Blackwood, is hereby sentenced to 180 months in a federal correctional facility, the judge said, his voice monotone and final. That is 15 years, Dante. 15 years for money laundering, wire fraud, and kidnapping. There is no parole in the federal system. You will serve 85% of that time. You will be 55 years old when you walk free. Dante did not scream. He did not cry. He just slumped forward until his forehead touched the mahogany table. It was the posture of a man who realized that his charm had finally bounced like a bad check. The judge turned to Courtney. She was trembling so hard her chair was vibrating against the floor. Courtney Vane, the judge continued. For your role in the conspiracy and for grand larceny, you are sentenced to 120 months, 10 years. However, due to the violation of your visa status upon completion of your sentence, you will be immediately remanded to the custody of ICE for deportation to your country of origin. Courtney let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. No, please. I have nothing there. I do not know anyone there. I am an American. You are a guest who violated the hospitality of this nation, the judge said, cutting her off. And you are a guest who stole from the people who fed you. Then came the financial hammer. The judge ordered full restitution. Every asset Dante and Courtney had touched was seized. The penthouse contents, the designer clothes, the jewelry, even the cash in their pockets. It was all property of the court, now destined to pay back the creditors and the victims. I watched the bailiffs move in. They cuffed Dante, hands behind his back. The steel clicked. It was the same sound as the lock on my front door the night I threw them out. Dante looked back at me one last time. His eyes were empty. He was looking for his father, but his father was not there. Only the forensic accountant was there, tallying the final column of the ledger. They led them away through the side door. The heavy oak door swung shut. It was over. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Beatrice. She was not smiling, but she was breathing easier. The fear was gone from her eyes. Let us go home, Cyrus, she whispered. We walked out of the courthouse. The reporters were still there, but I did not stop. I had said my piece. I helped my wife into the car. The city looked different through the window. It looked cleaner, but I knew there was one last transaction to handle, one last conversation. Because Dante was arrogant, and arrogance does not die easily, even in a cage. He would reach out. He would try one last hustle, and I would be waiting. 3 weeks later, the phone in my study rang. It was Saturday afternoon. I was reading a book about naval history. Beatrice was in the garden with Leo, teaching him how to plant tomatoes. I looked at the caller ID. It was a restricted number. I knew who it was. I picked up the receiver. This is a collect call from a federal detention center, a robotic voice said. Will you accept the charges? I pressed the button. Yes. Dad. It was Dante. His voice was different. It was higher, thinner. It was the voice of a man who had not slept in days. Hello, Dante, I said. Dad, you have to help me, Dante whispered. He sounded like he was crying. It is hell in here. They know who I am. They know I came from money. They took my shoes, Dad. They took my commissary money. I am sleeping on a metal cot without a mattress because a guy named Razor took it. I listened. I stared at the wall. I need protection money, Dante pleaded. 5,000. Just put it on my books, please. If I do not pay them by Monday, they are going to hurt me. They said they are going to break my other arm. You cannot let them hurt me, Dad. I am your son. I leaned back in my leather chair. I looked at the photo of Dante on my desk from his graduation. He looked so proud then, so full of promise. I picked up the photo and placed it face down. I am not putting money on your books, Dante, I said. Dad, please, he sobbed. They will kill me. I did not say I was not paying them, I corrected him. I said I am not putting it on your books. The sobbing stopped. What? I made a call this morning. Dante, I said, my voice calm and cold. I still have contacts from my days auditing the prison supply chains. I know who runs your cell block. I know Razor. You do? Dante asked, hope creeping into his voice. So you paid him off. You paid him to leave me alone. No, I said. I paid him to do a job. There was silence on the line. The The static of the prison connection hissed in my ear. "What job?" Dante whispered. "I paid him $2,000 a month," I said. "To make sure you wake up at 6 every morning. To make sure you make your bed. To make sure you work in the laundry room every single shift. And to make sure that if you try to gamble, if you try to hustle, or if you try to act like a big shot, he reminds you that you are nobody." "Dad, no," Dante gasped. "I paid for a babysitter, Dante," I said. "Not a bodyguard. Razor is not there to protect you from pain. He is there to protect you from your own arrogance. He is going to teach you the one thing I failed to teach you." "What is that?" Dante choked out. "Humility," I said. "You are going to scrub floors, Dante. You are going to wash sheets covered in other men's sweat, and you are going to do it for 15 cents an hour. And if you complain, Razor has instructions to explain the reality of your situation to you." "You are the devil," Dante screamed. "You are my father, and you sold me to the wolves." "I did not sell you," I said. "I enrolled you in school. This is your education, son. Learn to work or learn to bleed. It is up to you." I did not wait for his answer. I did not wait for more begging or more curses. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment listening to the dial tone. It was a lonely sound, but it was a necessary sound. I pulled the phone cord out of the wall. I wrapped the cord around the base of the unit. I stood up and walked out of the study carrying the phone. I walked to the kitchen and dropped it into the trash can. Strickland was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of documents. He watched me throw the phone away. "Is that it then?" Strickland asked. "That is it," I said. "Change the number. Unlisted. Only give it to the family." Strickland nodded. "And the will." I sat down across from him. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy fountain pen, a gift from Beatrice. The document in front of me was the last will and testament of Cyrus Blackwood. Clause 4. Strickland read aloud. "Regarding the beneficiary, Dante Blackwood." "Delete it," I said. "Entirely?" Strickland asked. "Not even a trust for rehabilitation." I looked out the window. I saw Leo laughing as he chased a butterfly. I saw Beatrice smiling, her face healing her spirit light. "Delete it," I said firmly. "He has had his inheritance. He spent it on 15 years of bad decisions." I wrote a new name on the legal pad. "Leo Blackwood," I said. "He gets the trust, but he does not get a dime until he is 30, and he only gets it if he finishes college and holds a job for 5 years. Strickland made the notation. "And if he turns out like his father." I looked at my grandson through the glass. "He won't," I said, "because I am raising him, and I am not going to make the same mistake twice. I am not going to shield him from the world. I am going to teach him to conquer it." "Sign here," Strickland said, pushing the paper toward me. I signed my name, Cyrus Blackwood. The signature was strong, steady, and clear. I put the pen down. "It is done," I said. I walked out the back door into the garden. The air was fresh, the sun was warm. Beatrice looked up and smiled. "Who was on the phone?" she asked. "Wrong number," I said. I knelt down in the dirt next to my grandson. "Show me how to plant those tomatoes, Leo," I said. He handed me a trowel. His hands were dirty. He was working. He was happy. "This is how you do it, Grandpa," he said. I smiled. "Yes," I said. "This is exactly how you do it. You dig a hole, you put in the work, and you watch it grow." I was 70 years old. I had lost a son, but I had saved a family, and for the first time in a long time the ledger was balanced. The Mediterranean sun felt different than the sun back home. It was not harsh or demanding. It was warm and steady like a hand resting on your shoulder. I sat on the aft deck of the yacht watching the wake churn the sapphire water into white foam. The boat was named The Verdict, a little inside joke between me and Strickland. It was a 100-foot vessel, quiet, powerful, and paid for in cash. 5 years had passed since the night of the warehouse. 5 years since the trial. 5 years of silence from the dark corners of my past. I took a sip of my iced tea and adjusted my sunglasses. Down on the lower deck I could see a boy sitting with a fishing rod. Leo was 10 years old now. He had grown tall, lanky, and sharp. He did not look like his father. He looked like his grandmother. He had Beatrice's kind eyes and her patient hands. "Leo, reel it in." Slow, I called down. "Do not fight the line. Let the fish do the work." "Yes," Grandpa Leo called back. His voice was clear and respectful. He did not whine. He did not demand. He listened. I watched him adjust his grip. He was a good boy. He was on the honor roll at his new school in Switzerland. He spoke 3 languages. He knew the value of $1 because I made him earn his allowance by polishing the deck brass. He was not growing up with a silver spoon. He was growing up with a compass. Beatrice walked out from the cabin. She was wearing a white linen dress and a wide-brimmed hat. She looked younger than she had in decades. The stress lines around her mouth were gone. The shadow that Dante had cast over her life had finally lifted, letting the light back in. She sat down next to me and placed a hand on my knee. "He looks happy," she said, watching Leo. "He is happy," I said. "He is safe." Beatrice sighed. It was a contented sound, the sound of a woman who no longer wakes up afraid of what the day will bring. "It is hard to believe it has been 5 years," she said. "It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was a lifetime ago," I said. "That was a different life, a life where we walked on eggshells. This is the life we earned." I looked at the horizon. The water stretched out forever, blue meeting blue. It was clean. That was the word that kept coming to my mind. Clean. No more lies. No more hidden debts. No more looking over my shoulder waiting for the knife. But peace requires vigilance. Even here in the middle of the ocean, I kept tabs on the loose ends. I picked up the tablet sitting on the table next to me. Strickland sent me a monthly report. It was a simple document. No commentary, just facts. I did not need commentary. I opened the file. The first section was titled Inmate 78442054. Dante. The report was brief. Dante had been transferred to a medium security facility in Pennsylvania. He was no longer in protective custody. He was in the general population. He had a job. He was assigned to the kitchen. I read the details. 0400 hours report to mess hall. Scrape trays, wash pots, scrub floors, wage 12 cents an hour. I closed my eyes and pictured it. My son, the boy who wore $3,000 suits and demanded 5-star service, was now standing in steam and grease, scraping half-eaten food off plastic trays. He was doing the work he thought he was too good for. He was learning humility the hard way, one dirty plate at a time. There were no more calls for protection money, no more begging. He had stopped calling 3 years ago when he realized I blocked the number. The prison chaplain sent a note once saying Dante was finding religion. I did not reply. Men like Dante find God when they run out of other options. It is not faith. It is a hustle. I scrolled down to the second section. Courtney Vane. After her deportation, she had been sent back to her country of citizenship, a small nation in Eastern Europe she had not visited since she was a child. She did not speak the language well. She did not have money. The authorities there knew about her criminal record in the States, so she could not get a visa to travel anywhere else. She was trapped. The report included a photograph taken by one of Strickland investigators. It showed a woman standing outside a smoky bar, wearing a faded apron and comfortable shoes. She looked older than 40. Her face was lined and hard. She was smoking a cigarette, looking at the ground. She was a waitress. She was serving drinks to men who did not care about her modeling career or her father empire. She was working for tips. I looked at the photo. I did not feel joy. I did not feel gloating. I felt a cold sense of balance. The scales had tipped wildly for years, but now they were level. Gravity had done its job. They had fallen to exactly where they belonged. Beatrice leaned over and looked at the screen. She saw the photo of Courtney. She saw the report on Dante. She did not say anything for a long time. She just looked at the reality of what had happened to our family. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were searching. "Cyrus," she asked softly, "do you ever feel sad? Do you ever regret it?" I turned off the tablet and set it face down on the table. I looked at my wife. I looked at the bruise on her soul that had finally healed. I thought about her question. It was a fair question. A father is supposed to protect his children. A father is supposed to forgive. But I was not just a father. I was a guardian. "Beatrice," I said, taking her hand, "imagine you have a leg that is infected. It is gangrenous. The rot is spreading. It is poisoning your blood. It is killing you slowly. The doctor tells you that you have to cut it off." I paused, looking at Leo, reeling in a fish down on the deck. He was laughing, shouting for the deckhand to help him with the net. "Cutting it off hurts," I continued. "It is the most painful thing you can imagine. It leaves a scar. It leaves a phantom ache where the limb used to be. You miss it. You remember when it was strong and healthy. But if you keep it, you die. The rot takes everything." I squeezed her hand. "I do not feel sad." "Beatrice," I said, "I feel light. I feel the relief of a man who survived a fever. I cut off the limb to save the body. I cut off the rot to save us, and to save him. I pointed at Leo. If Dante were here, Leo would be a pawn, I said. He would be leverage. He would be corrupted. Now he has a chance. He has a future. That is not something to regret. That is something to celebrate. Beatrice nodded. She understood. She had always understood. She just needed to hear me say it. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You are a good man, Cyrus," she whispered. "I am a necessary man," I corrected gently. My phone on the table buzzed. It was a priority notification, the special ringtone I have for the main trust account. I picked it up. It was a notification from the bank in Zurich. The quarterly dividends from the hotel conglomerate had just posted. Deposit received. $50,000 USD, $50 million in 1 quarter. The business was thriving. Since I removed the leech of Dante's shell company, since I stopped hemorrhaging cash to cover his mistakes, the empire had doubled in value. The hotels were full. The investments were sound. The audit was clean. I looked at the number. It was just a number. It was pixels on a screen. It did not make my heart race. It did not make me feel powerful. The power was not in the money. The power was in the silence. The power was in sitting on this deck with my wife and knowing that no one was coming to take it away. No one was plotting. No one was lying. I looked at Beatrice. "Who is it?" she asked lazily. Her eyes closed against the sun. "Spam," I said. I pressed the power button on the phone. I held it down. The screen went black. I put the phone in my pocket. I stood up and offered my hand to my wife. "Come on, Beatrice," I said. "Leo caught a fish. Let us go see if it is big enough for dinner." She smiled and took my hand. We walked down the stairs to the lower deck. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The water was calm. I was 75 years old. I had lost a son, but I had saved a family. And for the first time in my life, the ledger was perfectly balanced. I spent 40 years thinking that providing for my family meant shielding them from the world. I was wrong. By removing every obstacle from my son's path, I didn't make him successful. I made him weak. I learned the hard way that true love isn't about giving your children everything they want. It's about giving them the values they need to survive without you. Money is just paper, but character is iron. If you build a foundation on lies and easy cash, it will crumble. But if you build it on truth and hard work, it will outlast you. If you believe that respect must be earned and not bought, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice served cold.